We can have your attention for a moment, please. If everyone can take out their cell phones, handheld, personal devices. They have to be powered down. They can't be on vibrate, silent, or any other mode other than powered down. If you are speaking this evening, we ask that you please direct all comments and questions and concerns to this board. Please sign in. Also talk into the microphone. If you do need to speak to one another in the audience, please take it out in the hallway. It interferes with our opportunity to hear those that are speaking. And as always, we're going to be courteous to one another. We're going to start this evening's meeting with first a motion to open.
I make a motion that we open the meeting, September 28th meeting of the Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome to the September 28th, 2015 meeting of the Architectural Board of Review and Historic Preservation. My name is Curtis Highsmith, and I'm your chair. I'd like to introduce our panel. We have Jeff Broadley, Christina Redding, Esther Pastor, Brian Brady. We'd like to welcome our historic consultant, Zach Studenroth, our legal counsel, Bo Robinson, and as always, Antoinette. We welcome you as well. We're going to start this evening's meeting with signs and first application, please.
First application is Stop and Shop.
Is the applicant present?
Good evening.
Good evening. Your name for the record, please.
Richard Brown for Agnoli Signs.
Richard, this is a replacement of the wall-bound sign with the Stop and Shop logo and signage, correct?
That's correct.
Are you duplicating the position and location of the signs that are currently on the building?
I believe they're the exact same position, and I believe a little less square footage per sign.
Not a bad thing. Any of the signs, any of the letters backlit?
No.
Any of them illuminating in any manner at all?
The front sign is indirectly illuminated with the goosenecks, which are there now.
Currently there.
They're going to be there, the exact same position.
Okay. So we have the same locations mimicking
Yeah.
the signs that are currently there for wall-bound. There's nothing in addition to what's already presently there? Any
No.
window decal, any?
No.
Nothing. All right. And the copies of the swatches here are a representation of the colors that are being presented.
Colors
correct?
that'll be used on the trademark Stop and Shop letters and logo.
Brian, any comments?
No, I'm glad you're here.
Let's do.
Christine?
No, hurry up.
Okay.
Esther?
Fine. It's good.
Jeff?
I'm good.
As you can tell, we're waiting for change. So change is not a bad thing. Is there any public comment in the application? Okay. How soon before the signs are up?
Probably within the month or so. That's what we're talking about.
Month or so.
Well, within the month or so, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the production schedule right now. We are waiting for the approval.
Okay. Well, we'll expedite this now.
Okay.
So my wife can stop going to Hampton Bays.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the signs, the four storefront signs for Stop and Shop on Jagger Lane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And our final sign permit for this evening.
Stephen Wang and Associates, an architect sign.
Is the applicant present? It's an architectural sign. I'm assuming that it's black and white. There is no representation here to validate that be the case, but the sign here that's being proposed seems to be black and white. Architectural sign has the name of the company, Architects, its address, location, telephone number, and website. Question is, do you feel that it's appropriate or busy?
I just think the bottom line's not necessary. You won't even be able to see it, really. So, I mean, I could see just having a phone number or a website on there, larger. You know.
I agree.
I agree.
Since there's no representation here to give any clear-cut description of whether the applicant is willing to make those adjustments, we'll adjourn the application for this evening until representation is present. Any public comment on the application? Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn the architectural sign application for Stephen Wang and Associates.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Concludes our sign permits for this evening. First application, historic.
First application is Antonio Farnos, 124 Herrick Road. And I need to recuse myself from this.
My name is Franco Biscardi, Vice President of Brady Design. Also this evening, the owners of the house, Ayla and Antonio Farnos, are here and would like to speak as well. At the previous meetings, the board did not have any objections to the design of the house, but had concerns about changing the stucco to wood shingles. Zach Studenroth was asked to write a report with his recommendations for the project, which he did, and has been in the file for several weeks. Zach also does not have any objections to the architectural design of the house. As for changing the stucco to wood shingles, Zach mentions that shingles are an appropriate material for the colonial revival style of the house, but would like to see the stucco remain because of its character as part of the trio of houses built by the same builder. The Farnoses have agreed to keep the house stucco and will be changing the roof to wood shingles. There have been neighbor objections. First of all, removal of the sunroom. The lot coverage for this property is at its maximum, and the only way to expand the house is to keep the size of the footprint the same. Therefore, we are taking the sunroom footprint and adding that to the rear of the house so we can expand the kitchen and create a master suite on the second floor. We're replacing the sunroom with a pergola that is the exact same size as the sunroom. The third floor dormer. The third floor dormer is a shed dormer which is different than the gable dormers on the original part of the house. This was done intentionally to set the addition apart from the original house, which is what the board likes to see when adding on to an historic structure. The neighbor to the west is concerned about privacy from this dormer. This is not a deck, which the board objects to, but is an office. To alleviate this issue, the owners are willing to install extensive landscaping to screen the neighbor's property. Landscape plans were presented at the last meeting. Basement. Although the board has no jurisdiction over the basement, we want to be clear that the house is being lifted in order to provide a deeper basement to accommodate the program requirements of the owner. Currently, the existing foundation is only 6 inches above grade. Good construction practices call for foundations to be at least 18 inches above grade to prevent moisture from entering the house. The new foundation will ensure that the house will stand for another 100 years. In order to keep the foundation above grade and install the code-required light wells, the house will end up being 1 foot 8 inches taller than it currently stands. The final height is 32 feet 5 inches, which is still below what is required by zoning. Stucco. The owners have now agreed to keep the house stucco. As the board members know from visiting the site, the house cannot be seen from the street, and these changes will have no impact on the architectural character of the neighborhood. The Farnoses have met with Lori Carson, the westerly neighbor, and feel that they have alleviated all of her concerns through extensive landscaping. The main issue seems to be the stucco, and hopefully by keeping it, the board will vote favorably on this application. This is our third meeting for this property, and we would kindly request that the board close this hearing for written decision by council. And now the Farnoses would like to speak.
Hi, I'm Isla Farnos, and I just wanted to say that we've been a little bit confused by all the commotion that our proposed renovation has made because, we're a young family. We have 2 daughters. We're trying to just build a family home. We understand the limitations, and we're in the historic district, and that's why we started working with Brian, because we knew that he would work within the bounds of, maintaining the historic integrity of the house and do what was acceptable to the board. And so we didn't want to, rattle any cages or upset anybody. And we understand that there's a nostalgic element. And so we agreed to keep the house stucco, which is not what we originally wanted to do. But we feel like that is a concession to the trio of houses that will not, hopefully, provide problems for anybody. I mean, the other concerns were well within the zoning requirements. And, as far as the lifting of the house, as Franco mentioned, we are dealing with mold and humidity in the house and moisture in the basement because of the way the house is set on the ground. So these are sort of concerns and things that we're dealing with from a safety perspective. We have pipes breaking down every day. It's a very old house that was built 100 years ago. So we need to modify it. And as for moving the sunroom, It's to build a bigger kitchen and family room for our girls, you know? And it's just, it was an old house the way it was built. And we're respecting the facade and the, you know, everything that we can while making it a livable situation for our family.
I think the lifting of the house to concern has to really do with, as you stated several times in your comment, it's an older home. So whenever you take an older home and you move it, you lift it, you do anything with it out of its current foundation, there's a risk of damage, there's a risk of anything could possibly happen to what is a historic relic. So therefore, there's some concern as to how it's being managed, how it's being maintained. Will it be done in a professional and a manner that that preserves the house and to assure that nothing happens to it? So yeah, there is always going to be concerns whenever you say the word lift or relocate with a historic house. Zach, would you agree, disagree? Would you like to add to that comment?
No, without belaboring it, I think that the stucco finish was an issue, it was a cosmetic issue, but because there's a larger context for that treatment in that particular neighborhood, it took on a greater attention than it might otherwise, and I commend you on being receptive to a higher level of preservation of this house than you were originally feeling aesthetically, because the aesthetics essentially would remain very much the same. I think the project as proposed is extremely appropriate. The enlargement of the house is to the back, which is entirely out of public view, and therefore is really almost immaterial here. This business of lifting houses is always a personal concern of mine. And not so much the lifting of it, but the pouring of the new foundation and then the setting of it down again. I am extremely confident that the professional advice and guidance that you're getting will get it right. Because many times it gets wrong. And wrong means the pour is wrong. It's too big. The house sits on a foundation that it shouldn't be sitting on because the calculations are wrong. And the relationship of the wall surfaces to the foundation are wrong. Now what do? We have poured concrete in. I'm very confident that this will be handled, appropriately. But I always express that little concern because we have witnessed it not being done right, and the remedies are very few. So I encourage you to move forward. I think it's a great project. I think the design is perfectly appropriate, and I'm very happy with the proposal.
Any other comments?
No, I would just like to reiterate to your point, that's why we went with Brian also. I mean, he has experience, he's very well respected in this community, and he knows what he's doing.
Well, I heard someone say, and he's on the board, and I think this application process has shown just being on this board doesn't guarantee an approval immediately.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, any further public comment?
Good evening. Lori Carson, 112 Herrick Road, the neighbor to the west of the Farnoses. I'd just like to start by saying I think that this case, from a historical preservation perspective, should have been very straightforward from the beginning. I feel that the original presentation by the architectural firm did not adequately cover the scope of the alterations that were being proposed to a historic house in a historic district. And I think that led to a lot of confusion in the neighborhood and to the neighbors. And the presentation that was presented tonight was much more thorough. So I think, just as an aside, that is a lesson learned. My concerns from the beginning have been twofold. One, the historical implications of this application as they relate to historic preservation. And secondly, privacy that will be infringed upon by the addition of the third story, actually it's a third story addition dormer. Just briefly, the historical implications, which have been been stated, 124 Herrick Road is one of 3 trio sister houses that have stood gracefully side by side for almost 100 years without any exterior alterations whatsoever. I think these 3 homes have been deemed historic by the village historic consultant, and they are part of the historic district. I think when you look at this application, you do have to look at them in the context of the other 2 houses, because according to your historic guide for homeowners, and I will read it, it says, alterations should be compatible with the historic character of the property as well as nearby properties. And the one thing that was now mentioned this evening that was completely glossed over in previous meetings was the lifting of the house. The house is going to be probably another 1.5 feet higher. This was never mentioned, and actually, Mr. Chairman, in the August 10th minutes, you did say that there was legitimate concern about the privacy with the third-floor dormer. Now, the neighbors have willingly said that they will put some landscaping in to help screen this. They are proposing 16 to 18-foot evergreen trees. I think this dormer is going to be 30 feet high. So I question whether that is a true screen, and no one really addressed your request from the August 10th meeting, so I really would like that to be more thoroughly answered, if it could be, because I do think that that still is an infringement on the privacy to my property. I am very pleased that the Farinoses have agreed to keep the house stucco. That is definitely a distinguishing feature of these 3 homes. The lifting of the house, however, does change the roof line. That was not mentioned in the consultant's review. And if you then look in the context of one of these 3 houses with a higher roof line, it does disrupt the unity and harmony of these 3 houses. And it does change the character of that particular section of Herrick Road that backs up to the first burial ground. So I would like a little more thorough addressing of this height thing. I do think it changes a lot. It's a distinguishing feature. These houses have all had the same footprint. I know that this property is challenging because there is a non-conforming tennis court on the property, and therefore it makes adding square footage to this house difficult, but that's not really a reason to dismantle a lot of distinguishing features. So in closing, I just would like to thank you all for your time and the careful consideration that you have given to this application. I hope that you will remain objective and focus on the historic relevance and merits of this case, which I think are compelling. Your decision is precedent-setting and has the potential to impact the history of this village forever. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
I am Sheila Fuchs. I live at 98 Herrick Road, and I'd like to begin by restating the name of this board. It is the Architectural Review and Historic Preservation, and this project is all about historic preservation. From the beginning, the multiple objections to this project have been by very concerned neighbors regarding the complete change to this historic house. As it was originally presented, and I was here at the very first meeting, Brady Design said, we are just changing the windows and removing a later addition. That's all that was stated. I'd like to state that the addition is not a later addition. It is original to the house, and it is being removed because the lot coverage on this property, because of the pool and the tennis court, they have to take an original wing off in order to get more square footage. So that was not true in the first presentation. And therefore, all of the concerns that the neighbors have had and the discussion back and forth have only come because of the very concerned neighbors. Had none of us ever been here or ever looked at this application, it would have just been, we're just changing the windows and taking off a later addition. That's all that was presented. I was the one that asked, when I saw the plans, that they are putting all 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a gym, everything in the basement. I said, how could that be? I have one of these houses, and I know you can't put all that in the basement. So only then was it mentioned by Brady Design that the house, in fact, would be lifted up off its foundation. That was never presented, and only when questioned was it presented. I'd like to know what else is being done that hasn't been mentioned until somebody discovers it on their own. So I would like to state that we're very grateful that you've agreed to keep it in stucco. However, I agree with Lori Carson that lifting this house off the foundation is raising it almost 2 feet, which takes it out of line with the rest of the house. I know there are a lot of houses on Herrick Road that have been very sympathetically redesigned without making these dramatic changes. So I would like to ask that this board renew this, look at this application, and when it is a final, truthful, and forthright presentation, that all the concerns of the neighbors are dealt with, then perhaps you can look at approving it. But until that is done, and this drip, drip, drip of concerns that only the neighbors have discovered certainly wasn't presented by Brady Design. I request that you decline this application until all those concerns are met.
Well, we wouldn't
Thank you.
decline well, you're saying decline the application.
Well, I don't know what that means.
Okay, so let me just let
Okay.
you know the process. If we, for reasons that we are unsatisfied to give an approval, we would adjourn the application for further either development or further
Fine.
information from the
Well,
applicant. When you
until
say
those
decline,
concerns-
that leads to believe we would turn it down or a turn down or
I used the
decline.
wrong word.
That's okay, I just want to make sure. 'cause
Postpone.
We're building a record, and I want to make
Okay.
sure that in that record we use the right terminology.
Okay.
Secondly, I think what you've mentioned is the very thing that this process is all about. It's uncovering and discovering what the full application is. Now, we've been here, most of us, for a long term. I'm 10 years, Christine's even longer than I am. And during that time, these are processes that we've undergone where, yes, information is definitely presented and opens and expounds to more information as part of the application. One thing I will say about the applicant is that he's always presented what the height of the home was. How it got to that
It was
height.
never mentioned.
I believe it was. I believe the height
No,
of.
it was not.
I believe the height was part of the application, and I'm sure it's in testimony that he's done so and presented it at a
Been
height
to every
of.
meeting.
I understand that. But as that being part of the process, we will take that height as an overall application, and we would again, because we're an aesthetic board, we'll look at the evaluation of that height and what the impact of the community would be. You're correct, the lifting of the house was not part of the application, and had it been a part of the discussion, we probably would have went in depth about how it would be lifted and some of the details. So we appreciate you taking advantage of the process.
Well, it shouldn't have to be that concerned neighbors bring these issues up. They should be presented.
It's
and
part
they
of the
weren't.
it's part and part of the process.
Okay.
In any municipality you deal with, I do in the town, I
So if
deal with the
nobody
village.
complains, things get
And it
approved.
just is part of the process.
Okay. All right. Somebody else would like to speak.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Just one more. few
Your name
brief-
for the record, sir.
Joe Fuchs, 98 Herrick Road. A couple of very brief comments. Number one, I've been handed a letter from Sophie Haynes, who is the neighbor to the east of the Farnosa's property. And understand, this is all very difficult. You'd rather live in a harmonious neighborhood, and it is, and we want it to be. I have agreed to read a piece of it anyway. And unfortunately, I'll not be able to be here. I hope you will speak for me, and I'm going to skip over some issues here. But this addresses the harmonious nature of the neighborhood and Herrick Road. The street has particular meaning for me as it was named after my son, Skylar Haynes, who was killed in Iraq. It is a big honor, and I hope the street will remain as it is meant to be. Many thanks, Sophie Haynes. Now, what I'd like to do is expand on that just very briefly. In the first meeting, the house on the corner of James and Herrick Road was mentioned, And I think, Mr. Chairman, you suggested that it isn't particularly relevant to this issue. I think it is, and I would like to reinforce that by saying one of the things that happens when you build a big house, even with an L and some exposure, is that you can argue that there is planting that will mitigate some of the impact on the neighbors and the street. I am reminded of a wonderful article about the house that was built. It was in the Southampton Press. And I'd like to read just one paragraph from that. The home was leveled, and they worked on the property from the outside in, starting with the perimeter, where Mr. Davis bought and planted 144 18-foot arborvitae. Absolutely dramatic. They're wonderful. I didn't want the neighbors to feel, sorry, I don't have glasses on, that they were building something too big. I didn't want them to feel like they were going to be impacted by what was going on to be built here, he explained. Point, landscaping is wonderful. Landscaping is short-term, not long-term. Rebuilding and redoing a house in dramatic fashion is indeed long-term. And that is what's disturbing many of the neighbors along Herrick Road, that indeed another large box will be visited upon the neighborhood. And we implore you in this historic district that you consider the overall context of the street, not just the specifics, and please don't make, I was about to say, the same mistake again as was made on that corner. It's pretty awful. And I thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, sir.
Can I just say a couple of things?
I'm sure you're going to need to say a few more just in case there's any additional comment.
No.
Is there any more public comment?
Okay. First of all, with regard to the roof line, there are 3 different roofs, and we're well within the zoning limit, and the roofs are never going to be
You
lined
have
up.
to direct your comments to the
Sorry,
board.
they're never going to be lined up together, 3 houses mushed together. They're 3 very different looking roofs, and the houses, I know they're all stucco, but they're very different. They may have a similar footprint, but they don't. The only one, the Fuchs house, 98, looks like ours, but they've changed their front, and we haven't come and objected to it or anything like that. It's their home. As far as Lori Carson's privacy concerns, if it's the dormer window that is bothering her, we are willing to not have that dormer window. We'll just have a wall there. So I'd like to state that for the record. I don't know how else to address the concerns of the corner of Herrick and James, which we have nothing to do with, and any of the other concerns that have been brought up.
So you're saying that the dormers be decorative?
The dormer was actually because it's my husband's office, and there's a beautiful copper tree that he wanted to look at while he was working. But if Lori is concerned that our trees won't be high enough to cover the view into her garden, which we're not going to be looking into, but we are willing to not have a window there, if that's of concern.
Zach, questions with regards to the lifting of the house and I guess the main concern is the impact to the symmetry of the homes as that relates for that 2-foot difference.
My concern that I'm raising, because we have experienced an unforeseen process of lifting and putting a house back down on a new foundation, which essentially is rarely represented. The actual specifications, the hundreds of pages of construction documents that would be associated with the visuals that are presented are the process that the contractors, et cetera, go through to get the place from where we are now to the final product.
We look at the final
And
product.
we are rarely privileged to see that process. And my only point is that we have experienced that actual process can, on some occasions, impact the final product. And so I raise that as a concern, that we should think about how that process is handled. But the final product I find to be entirely appropriate. I agree that the final ridge line, so distant from its neighbors and so hedged and so out of public view, which is our purview, has no impact upon this. I also find it odd to remove a dormer window from an attic. Quite frankly, You know, we concern ourselves with decks and active entertainment areas that are occupied and might in fact impact some neighbors' enjoyment of their space. But a simple dormer window on an attic level is a normal architectural feature, and whether that space is being occupied by this present owner as an office or some future owner as a child's playroom is immaterial. I think that's an appropriate architectural element, and I can't see that its presumed use now has any impact on the design. I think it's perfectly fine. So I think it's a good design, and I also have to take some exception to the notion that the only reason this board looked into this design was at the objections of the neighbors. That is absolutely not the case. This is a contributing historic resource in the district, and just as virtually all of them, you asked me to review the impact of the design. It had nothing to do with neighbors' objections. In my experience, because in fact, I was not here at the meeting. And yet I was still asked to review the
Okay,
designs,
but-
not based upon neighbors' objections.
The applicant, board members, the applicant has made made a couple of accommodations on this application from its beginning. Part of which, making the adjustment from cedar shingle to going back to stucco. Most of the impact of the structure, as our historic consultant has mentioned, is at the rear of the property, out of our peer review. The privacy concerns that they may be raised, most of which I agree with Zach, we concern ourselves with areas that are more of an entertainment area, such as a second-story deck. Windows are windows. I mean, we look out the rear of my window and I see my neighbor. The question is, are you entertaining, and is the privacy such a severity that it becomes uncomfortable? The applicant's has made suggestions to recommendations to put more screening on that side of the parcel, which whether the impact is grand or not, is a question between this board to decide. But overall, the changes in the evolution of this application. Do you have any other questions? Esther,
I do not have any further questions.
do you have any issues with the application as submitted?
I do not.
Christine?
No.
Jeff?
Yes. One for the record, I was not at the previous meeting, so I was not necessarily in approval or disapproval of the design. I just wanted to make that clear. I welcome the Farnoses to the community. They bought an historic house. They recognize that, and presumably recognize the obligation that goes with that. From a very simplistic standpoint, I'm not a historic scholar, but an historic house, especially when it's linked to two other houses, needs to remain consistent to preserve the historic nature of the community, which is, someone mentioned, part of our obligation. Coming into this meeting, looking at it, changing the materials made it a different house. Changing the roof line makes it a different house. Changing the sunroom makes it a different house. I very much appreciate the fact that you are sticking to the materials, but as in terms of the other two things, I think they represent a departure from the trio of houses as has been presented. So I would request, at least from my perspective, that the roof line remain as is, to be consistent with the other houses, and to not risk any damage that might occur, which could have catastrophic effects. But even that, I'm not an engineer, but just on a very simple basis, it's an historic house, historic neighborhood, and it's part of two other houses. So I would like to see the roof line remain the same.
Okay. Jeff is a member of the board, but there are four members here to voting. The two members said that they had no issue. After hearing Jeff's comments, do you still
Well,
go forward with your recommendation?
Let me just ask you this question, Jeff. Other than the roof line, do you have any other issues with it?
Well, originally the sunroom, but I think that's less of an issue in as much as it's going to be essentially the same shape. But it's the roof line at this point is the remaining issue.
Do you have an issue with the dormer?
No, because it's a little bit hard for me to visualize that in terms of the privacy issue, and I'm not sure a dormer without a window is any more attractive than a dormer with a window, unless it
there's
was going to be a blank
No,
wall.
there's a window there, it's just that it's inoperable, so there'll be a board behind it, so there's no interior visual impact from the inside. But as stated by, and which I agree with, and is part of historically what we've done as a board, when privacy has an issue or concern, it usually is areas that are more of the entertainment area, such as a second-story deck, such as maybe a more living space, an attic that is probably occupied for a portion of the day, potentially from someone who's, I would assuming, staying more towards the center because there's still there's slopes. So you're laying down or you're staying more towards the center of the house. I don't see a major impact in the visual impact from a dormer.
No.
I understand your issues. I understand your concerns. I understand the roof line. We're talking a two-foot difference from a spaced parcel. If you saw the streetscape, you acknowledge that, and if you 2 feet in just in a visual walkthrough or even drive-through would be such a minimum impact that I don't think it.
I'm not, that's subjective and it's a judgment. And yes, percentage-wise, it may not be a big difference, but I think as it's been demonstrated and as Zach has pointed out, it is a trio of houses. And that any inconsistency in the roof line breaks up that trio. And I'm also concerned about the potential precedent it might set for this board in other situations. So to answer Esther's question, my remaining concern is the roof line.
The roof line. So I've been to this property many times because I feel it is a very important decision that this board is going to make. And it's very, very hard for me to really take a look at these 3 houses. When I walk down the street, where I drive down the street, looking at 3 houses, I do not believe that I would be able to detect 1.5 feet to 2 feet in a visual difference between these 3 houses. Furthermore, when these houses were built, I doubt that there was the kind of mature landscaping that we have now in 2015. And whereas during that period of time, these houses may really have appeared as a trio of houses, I really don't feel that's the case. They look like different houses. I think that we are charged with a very, very difficult place to be. We have people that are coming into our community that want to live with their family in the lifestyle that they choose. This is not a spec builder. This is a family. They have mold issues in their basement. They need to lift the house up. They need to provide proper ventilation. And they like to capitalize on some of the space that they will naturally get from doing that. They're going to have to lift the house up anyway in order to do this kind of remediation. And my feeling is that to deny them that extra 1.5 feet because of 2 neighbors is really not fair to them. I think that they have made absolutely every effort to be correct, to be good neighbors, to try to make accommodations. And I really do not feel, Jeff, that it's going to have an impact on this, quote, trio of houses that I, for one, cannot see when I walk down the street, and certainly not when I drive down the street. So that's my feeling. I am ready to close this application, personally.
Just for the record, understand that whether an applicant is a spec builder, a homeowner, seasonal resident, or any other
Point well taken.
representative
Thank you.
is irrelevant of this board. It's unfortunate it's irrelevant of this board, but we have to look at each application subjectively, objectively, and make sure that we're making a recommendation based on the impact to the village overall, not to whom is going to be residing in the property.
I agree. But, I mean, if we look at this, they are staying within the square footage, they're staying within zoning, they've made the accommodation to go back to stucco, they're adding additional landscaping. I feel it's a very tasteful modernization of a beautiful historic home.
Christine?
I agree with Esther. I want to thank you for sticking to the stucco, which I think was important to me. I live in a stucco house built by the same, it's a smaller version of your house. I agree with Esther. I think that when it's all done, I don't think that the height impact I don't think it'll be an impact on the street. It's a very difficult job. We don't have an easy job. And we spend a lot of time making our decisions. We don't do them lightly. I've been to this site many times, and so has Esther. We look at it very carefully.
Seems that there's a favorable 3 vote, so at this point, we'll close the application for written decision by council. At this point, we'll empower our council to prepare that written decision with a favorable move forward for the application. Understand that this time, when the application is closed, is your discretion to come back at the next meeting to collect the approval if you choose to do so. It's not a requirement. So at this time, we'll close the application for written decision. Anything further from the public? Anything further from the board? Motion to close for written decision by council.
I make a motion that we close the application of Antonio Fanos at 124 Herrick Road for a written decision by our council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next application, council.
There is a memo in the file regarding this in which I've noted several issues. My concern was that these gates are already built, and my remembrance of the application was that it was presented as it was not presented in that context. The survey itself shows the gates as proposed. Therefore, I believe the application is incomplete. I have requested that the applicant submit a full, formal, updated survey inasmuch as the gates have been built. I also noticed what appeared to be a deer fence, and I don't know whether or not there's a permit for that. And I also noted another issue with regard to the contractor. So the building department can deliver that memo to the applicant tomorrow, and the applicant can decide what to do about the future of the application.
Okay. Next application is closed, so it doesn't require us to adjourn. Next application, please.
Next application is 241 Hill Street.
Good evening, Anthony Vermiglia, 68 Union Street, Sag Harbor. I would like to, I suppose, just start out with how this board would like to proceed with the discussion. I did receive this morning. I did receive the report on the structure which Zach did.
So you feel we should present the report and then you can respond your rebuttal?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm ready to respond to his concern. So.
Thank you. Zach?
Right, well, of course, this is a contributing residence on Hill Street, and a garage which is not identified as contributing in a historical sense. So the treatment of that should be considered purely on aesthetic grounds, but not with regard to the treatment of the architectural fabric. I feel that the enlargement of the house is very appropriately handled. It's a modest extension to the back of a large house that has already been extended. And the addition to the back, while set back from the side facades, the ridgeline of it is at the height of the ridgeline of the existing house. So it's a big addition. In my assumption is it was probably made in the late 19th, maybe the early 20th century. So it's an early house. It's been enlarged with a large extension. So what's being proposed is to simply take that further to the north, but scaled lower. So the ridge line of the proposed addition is, I would estimate, at least 2 feet lower than the ridge line of the existing house. And again, it's virtually out of sight from Hill Street. I mean, this is a house which is not only hedged, but of course plantings are not really the issue. But this is a small addition off the back of a large house that has a large addition. And all the architectural detailing associated with that is very appropriately handled. The only issue, which we've touched on earlier, the only concern that this raises, and this may go to how specific the drawings are annotated or not, has to do with this process of taking an existing house and enlarging it. If, and it's difficult to read this from the drawings, if the project is simply that of extending the existing building, excavating a proper foundation under it, etc., then that's that. But where we lack information at times in the presented drawings, the elevations, is whether or not the entire house is going to be lifted, an entirely new foundation, creating a basement, et cetera, is going to be introduced with the house being put down. We don't know that process.
Is house being lifted?
That's a concern to me.
There you go.
So, okay. Well, there are annotations in the drawings which have to do with framing to be replaced as necessary. That appears in what I take to be the original kitchen extension, which I think was enlarged, both sideways and second story up the back. So, I mean, I'm only trying to intuit what I'm reading from the plans, but again, I think this is not so much the deficiency of the application, but rather in, perhaps in our own code, what is requested of an applicant to define exactly what's happening. And if the process is not.
Question, is that process a necessity that this board take in consideration if the outcome reaps the height, width, and dimensions on the exterior?
It would be because you're a board of architectural and historic preservation.
Okay.
And so the process of preserving something in the process of redesigning it is of interest. It's important. Certainly the final product will be as it's presented. It'll be beautiful. New facades, large addition off the back, etc. But what is the process that we go through? And I don't mean to make you the reason for having this discussion, but I feel that it may even be the definition and clarification within our own code that lacks addressing that point. Because I think there are all good intentions in this, and you're an aesthetic and a design review board, but we are concerned about preserving the house.
So could that be one of the many steps that we've asked to be part of the new checklist requirement for the building department before it comes before us?
I think that if a house, as may often be the case, the former application was, it was an inadequate cellar that needed more, whatever, it's entirely reasonable. But if that's part of the project, the elevation drawings very often do not represent what that project is. And therefore, you're lacking some information. You should make a judgment about how is this house going to be preserved. And that was the only point that I really made. I think the design that has been presented is absolutely appropriate to this historic house.
So on the record, one more time, are you lifting a house?
We're not lifting the house. And I can go into a little more specifics if you want with regard to, what we're planning to do structurally to the existing structure, to the existing house. We'll call this a front section and a back section. Front section is the older section. It's everything, if you look at the first floor plan, just for reference, everything forward to the butler's pantry is the older part of the house. The owners actually did a little interior refurbishment of that front section of the house over the winter, repainting, refinishing the floors, and things of that nature. There's no intention in this application to do any work with any further work with that front part of the house other than put in a rat slab in the crawl space. That front part of the house, it's in a crawl space. The foundation itself seems like it's in reasonably good condition. There's been some remedial structural work done to the floor of that front section over the years. The house has actually been very well maintained. It does need a rat slab in the basement, a rat slab meaning a concrete slab instead of just dirt. It's the front section. I'm going to move on to the back section, which is, as Zach said, and I think I agree with him, it seems like an early 20th century addition there. What we're planning on doing there, it's kind of a hodgepodge as far as the basement goes. It's kind of the center part is dug out deep enough that you can walk around in it, but the perimeter is just crawl space, so there's kind of a brick that goes down 4 feet or so on the perimeter. Then there's just dirt embankment, and then it goes down another 4 feet in brick in the middle, which is where all the mechanicals were. What we're planning on doing is not removing all of the floor structure in that addition, but the floor structure of the kitchen itself and also the mudroom. What that will allow us to do is during construction will allow us to gain access to the basement itself for some work we need to do in there, but also to relay the joists to get a level floor for the new kitchen. The new kitchen will be in exactly the same spot as the existing kitchen, which is basically I don't think has been changed at all since the 80s at the latest. So we'll be doing a new floor structure for that kitchen and the mudroom. As far as that early 20th century additional structural work, we're not, keeping our fingers crossed. We're hoping to not do any additional structural changes to that. There's some new windows. There's a window replacing an existing sliding door, so obviously that's going to need some infill framing. Just from experience, I know that once we, there's certainly going to be some sistering of joists here and there, sistering of studs here and there, but the intention is to keep that early 20th century addition, other than those 4 changes I mentioned, intact. In the basement of that 20th century addition, we will be doing, removing the back. There's actually 2 back walls. There's sort of the brick wall that drops down where the mechanical space is, and then the shelf, the Dutch shelf, as it's sometimes called, and then the brick wall forming the perimeter. That back wall, those 2 back walls, will be partially removed to gain access to the basement underneath the new basement, the new foundation underneath the addition. We're going to be reusing the existing basement stairs as the access to the basement. So we need to get access from there, from the existing basement to the rear, and that at this stage is what we're planning to do structurally.
Thank you. So now can we discuss things that are within our parameter?
Sure.
Talk a little about the extension.
Okay. Well, the addition is, it's to the rear of the 20th century addition. It's going to be basically a family room and a ground floor bedroom and bathroom. Also, open porches along the back and one side. On the second floor of that addition will be what we're actually doing is changing the existing master bedroom in the early 20th century addition is going to become the master bathroom, and then the second story addition will be the new master bedroom chamber. The second story addition doesn't cover the entire perimeter of the first floor addition, and that's how we were able to bring the roof line of the addition down about 30 inches lower than the existing roof line. The windows are, at some point in the not-too-distant past,
So the dotted line here represents the addition.
Yes, exactly.
That is your addition.
Exactly.
Rear of
Yes.
the property.
And at some point in the not-too-distant past, most but not all of the original windows of the house were replaced with wood Marvin double hungs. For that reason, in the addition, the new windows will also be wood Marvin double hungs. The trim details, the porch details, all of that will match the existing. At this point in time, for this purposes of this application, we're just proposing the same paint color as the existing house. I think when the clients have focused on the exterior paint color, we may want to revisit that as an amendment, but for the purposes of this application, we're going to assume it'll be the same color, which is basically a white trim and kind of a sort of greenish, grayish shingles, painted shingles. And that's about it.
That's the previous file, guys. This goes in the previous file. Brian, have you had the opportunity to review this file?
Yes, I have no objection with it at all. I think it's a very, very tasteful addition.
Esther?
I agree with that.
Christine?
I'm okay.
Jeff?
I'm good.
Rear of the property in keeping, you're duplicating what exists. You're holding true to the actual aesthetic and design of the original structure. I think once it's finished, it will look like it was always part of the home. Any public comment on the application? Zach, anything further? Application is located in the historic district, therefore requires written decision by council. Within the next 2 meetings, or the next, we will have a written decision for this application.
Do I, just refresh my memory, do I need to be present for the written decision?
You don't need to be. It's your discretion and whether you'd like to have that written decision, or you can go to the building department and have it for yourself.
Okay, great, thank you.
But you seem to have the 5-0 vote. Motion to close for written decision.
I make a motion that we close the application of 241 Hill Street LLC for a written decision by our council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, council.
For the next application, number 4, also applicable to number 5, 6, and 7. The board has in the files decisions for each of those, approving the applications as submitted or amended during the original submission. So an affirmative vote on any one of those applications will be to approve the application.
Start first with 160 Ox Pasture. Motion to approve written decision by council, the approval of the application for 160 Ox Pasture.
Make a motion that we approve the written decision by our council for JAF 160 Ox Pasture Holdings.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to approve written decision by council for 70 Elm Street.
I make a motion that we approve the written decision by our council for 70 Elm Street LLC.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve written decision by council for 436 Gin Lane.
I make a motion that we approve written decision by council for Halcyon Lodge LLC at 436 Gin Lane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve written decision by council for 310 Hill Street.
I make a motion that we approve the written decision by council for Anthony Punnett at 310 Hill Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application, please.
Next application is Pamela Michalchek, 8 Fairley Road.
Where did these go?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. I'm Tom Lawrence of Bulgin and Associates on behalf of Pam Michalchek, the owner of 8 Fairley Road, and we are asking your approval this evening to replace the 4 chimneys of her home. We hope that our submittal was clear, complete, and of use in your review, and if there are any questions or clarifications needed, I will do my best to answer them.
This is just the chimneys?
Just the chimneys.
And it's 4. It
We're
says
able
2
to
on
do,
the-
due to weather and holidays and construction, we're going to do 2 immediately, and then we'd like your permission to do all 4 the same. They all suffer the same inadequacies and age.
Challenges the application for today is to, I don't believe we can approve forward an application for 4 if it's not part of the application overall. There may be a cost involved, I'm not sure. if
Are
council-
the 2 that are not intended to be presently done, are they part of the documented submission?
No.
Are they showing on the plans,
Only
just the
2.
2? Yeah, then they'll have to make an application for the other 2.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Sorry.
You have a sample of the brick? I'm trying to make light of your application, I'm sorry, it's just, you have more information about the type of brick you're using?
I have physical samples of the brick,
Okay.
and the photos were submitted with the application.
Very
Bear
good.
with me 1 second.
So
This is all we need
just
to
for
see.
clarification, these are all existing,
He's
They're being
replacing.
rebuilt.
He's
Existing
replacing,
being rebuilt.
right, with the same material, we don't,
Rebuilding.
okay,
rebuilding.
with the same material, or we don't? know
He's
that?
bringing a copy of the brick.
Okay.
And we have pictures in the file.
No issues.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry?
No issues.
Unless he comes with a yellow brick. we're okay.
Or a stone.
Right.
Where would you like?
Old and a little.
You're good. Board members.
I've been driving around with these for a while.
Just good in the winter.
Yes, I've held enough of those pledging. Any
No.
questions?
No.
Esther?
No.
Christine?
Okay.
Any public comment on the application? Historic consultant, any questions and comments or concerns about the use of brick to replace brick? Sorry, I'm just,
Nah, we're good.
even though it's very small, it is in a historic district, still requires written decision. You do understand that if you do decide to make the change and alter any of the other 2 chimneys,
We will
we'll
bring a
have
separate application.
Separate application,
Yes,
so the village can get more money. Anything further?
Not here.
Thank you.
all very
Motion to
much.
close for written decision by council.
I make a motion that we close the application of Pamela Michalczek on Fairley Road for a written decision by our council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Next application is the Bathing Corporation, 14 Jean Lane.
Good evening. Karen Gydra, Burke Flanagan, and Asato for the applicant, the Bathing Corporation of Southampton. I have just handed in the affidavit of mailing and the affidavit of posting. We're here tonight on an application which is actually primarily interior. It's to update and renovate the existing office at the Bathing Corporation. And in the process of doing that, they also wish to change some of the windows on the outside of the building to make them more uniform, extend the roof over the entrance. I have tonight with us, Tony Panza is the architect who designed the plans, and he's here to speak with you about them.
Are you changing the windows light and time?
No.
He's
making them better.
He's making them better.
Okay.
Just, yeah.
Well,
It's
okay.
just, yeah, since this.
Okay, now I see.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Tony Panza, architect for the club. As Karen was just so eloquently presented, I'll try to make this very quick. We are doing a refurbishment, what I would call of the north facade of the main portion of the clubs, and a very slight westerly facade right by the main entrance. We are replacing some of the windows in the current location, but in other areas where windows have been added kind of ad hoc over the past few decades, we're looking to take those out, go back to the rhythm that was or would have been there. We're also looking to refurbish the facade, which is a stucco facade, and not looking to change that to anything else like shingles. It'll stay stucco, the color that it is. We're looking to do the whole facade because there's a number of cracks and other mechanical items that have to be removed, so we don't want to do this just pieces here and there. I have the drawings. I'd be willing to go through anything that you would like to see. We also have samples of the shutters that would be going back up, which are the historical shutters that had always been there. Same color as the shutters had been, same color roof shingle where we find that we have to replace some of the roof shingles.
Zach, any questions about the, I mean, it's
No,
just
I
like.
think it's a well developed, reasonable. Did you work with any photographs? I think there's some wonderful photographs of the building that have been taken over the years. I'm just curious if you had access to that sort of visual documentation in developing these.
Yes,
designs.
Don, who's the general manager,
Uh-huh.
has provided that information for
I
us.
figured you have a good archive of that information, so that's great. Good to know.
Do you think we should go on a Saturday afternoon and do a site visit?
Maybe have lunch?
Is there lunch?
I don't have any issue.
None.
Esther?
It's an improvement, it needs to be done.
Christine?
I have no objections.
Jeff? Any public comment on the application? In the Historic District, written decision, next two meetings, they should be prepared. Any questions?
Thank you.
Motion to close for written decision by council.
I make a motion that we close the application of the Bathing Corporation at 14 Gin Lane for written decision by our council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Concludes our historic applications for this evening. First application, non-historic.
First application is the Village of Southampton for
No clock.
two-story ambulance barn.
Try this, hope it works.
Thank you.
Try this. Much better. Much better.
copy somewhere.
2 inches.
Evidently means a lot. It's okay.
Sorry for the delay here, folks.
They moved them from the end to the beginning.
Steve, I met with Steve earlier, and he said that the projector would be here, so when it wasn't, I had to go get my own, which I haven't used for a while. So apologies if I've taken longer than is comfortable.
Jeez. Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible.
Want to do charades?
Please. Do you need some time to work on that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Can we call the other applications while you're trying to work on that?
Sure.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. The application remains open. Counsel, Gary?
Gary decision will be October 13th.
Application's already open, closed, so it doesn't require us to do anything further. On the next application, which is 66 Meadowmere Lane, the applicant requested that the application be adjourned until the 26th. Motion to approve the applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant Meadowmere Partners LLC request to adjourn until the 26th of October.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And while we're at it, on number 8, just skipping down, for 104 Lewis Street, applicant requested that the application be adjourned. Did not give information on the actual date, so we'll say adjourn until the next meeting.
Okay, I make a motion that we adjourn Louise Gould of 104 Lewis Street at their request to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anything yet, sir?
Sorry. Oh, that's promising.
What about Barron? That might be a good one.
Go for another one. This will take me another minute.
Got you. I see driveway gates up here, so let's call in 83 Wickapog Road. Is the applicant present?
Christopher Gaynor, agent for Robert Barron.
White gates?
White gates. What I've done, Mr. Chairman, is the client and I have decided to raise the mid rail up to the same height as the mid rail or upper rail on the fence, the existing fence. The pickets will now be the same size as the existing fence, and the slats underneath are 3 inches wide, ½ inch thick, with a 1 inch gap between. The idea is that with the narrower slats, you'll get more visual through it, and it'll also be in keeping with the V-joint that's on the existing fence, trying to get some harmony out of this.
Okay. This fence?
That wasn't supposed to be in there. That's the basic fence. The lower slats there are basically what we're.
So
what
this is
we're-
an, oops.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that was in there.
This is correct.
That is correct, yeah.
And you brought in new plans to show that rendering?
No, there's no plans on this.
Why, okay.
That's the Village of Southampton file you're in.
Yeah, that's the reason why. That makes sense.
I was gonna say those are, no, I did not bring in new plans. The gate, the shape of the gate has remained the same. The only thing I've done is I've raised the mid-rail up and changed the material underneath.
I get it, but I would want to see 2 copies of this fence in file to make it
Okay.
complete.
Okay.
May I see that, Curtis?
No, he wants to look at this.
Timmy, you don't approve gates without plans.
That's what I'm going at. So we need 2 sets of renderings to, as part of the file to be complete, to approve the file. So unfortunately, until this board has a set of plans that shows exactly what you're, not just a photo that you've made some corrections, but an actual rendering that shows what the spacing is, spacing between slats, the actual slat, percentage of transparency, all of these things will be relevant as part of a full application.
Okay.
Brian, any questions? No. Esther, any questions?
No, you've just answered them.
Right.
Christine, any questions?
No.
Jeff, any?
No, pending the plans.
Any public comment on the application? All right, so pending, doesn't seem there's an issue about the spacing, the transparency, the percentage of transparency. Set of plans to indicate what you're proposing. Also show it in terms of our rendering so that we could see exactly and be able to approve exactly what you're proposing.
Thank you. I'll have it for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn until our next meeting.
Putting this in the
Motion that we
village.
approve the applicant Robert Barry's request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
Friday.
All in favor? Aye.
Christina, could I have a file folder, please?
Okay, Southampton Village ready.
We're ready. Thanks for your
It
patience.
better be good after all this.
Do we want the lights out?
I think in a moment. I'm going to introduce myself and my team here a little bit and give you a little bit of history, and then we can turn the lights out. I'm Rick Stott from Stott Architecture in Southampton. I'm here with Nick Amoruso from SCC Construction Management and Tim Rump, landscape architect from Aris Design. We also have Cameron Engineers, who are not here tonight on the team, and a number of others. I want to start with a little bit of history about where this project came from, and I have a video to show you of the design and some floor plans, and then a landscape plan. I'll try and be very brief. In 2009, we started looking at the ambulance barn on Meeting House Lane because it has many deficiencies. It's way too small for the way it's operating now. And we compared that ability to make additions to that building and make it operable to building a new building, and looked at various locations. The first location we studied was to the west of the existing police station up on the hill. The second location, besides renovating the existing building, was the firehouse on Meeting House Lane that was just about to be vacated. And the third location, after studying those pretty extensively, suggested by Mark Epley, was its current location just to the north of the police station on the other side of the driveway. So around 2013, we started looking at that location, and it seemed natural to fit into the hillside, similar to the way the police station does now, to utilize that level change to make the ambulance bays face the street, and developed a plan for that, which was pretty well developed, and began to realize that it didn't work so well, and I'll explain this a little bit later, to put the ambulance bays lower in the street, similar to the way the Sally ports are in a police station, because the height requirements for the floor-to-floor heights for the ambulance equipment is much taller than it is for police cars. So it meant that our main floor had to be so high that we couldn't make it accessible. We ran into too many problems with that scenario. So we switched the ambulance bays around to the west side. In many ways it works better. So I think we can turn the lights out now and I'll go through this. The video is very quick, it's only a few seconds, but I can stop and replay it if you want to see any parts of the elevation. So we're looking down now at the police station, a site which is at the bottom. The proposed ambulance building is just above it to the north. The driveway would be shared among the two. The sally ports to the police station are the first left-hand turn coming up the driveway. Then you proceed up the hill, make a right-hand turn into a parking area that's designated for ambulance squad volunteers, and the ambulance bays are just to the right. We did sun studies and studied shades and shadows to see where they fell in the building. Some of the icons that we used for the design of this were first responder buildings and rescue buildings, including coastal ambulance buildings. That's where the tower comes from. The tower in this case serves a number of different purposes. It's a stair tower, but it's also a light well, and it allows daylight to get into the back end of the lower level. The ambulance squad has an ATV vehicle that they keep in a shed, and we're going to move that ATV into its own shed and remodel the shed a little bit so the back ends are compatible with the dog park. So that's the video, and I have also floor plans I can show you. Tim, I'm going to put up your, I'll show this one first, and you. Okay, this is the main floor. The driveway is not shown on this drawing, but it would be right along the bottom of the page, so the front entrance is opposite the police station entrance. There are 5 ambulance bays to the west of the building that are at grade, of course, and 2 of those bays are deeper to handle back-to-back first responder vehicles. So we really have enough room in there for 7 automobiles, including the 3 full-size ambulances that they have.
Your interior floor plans, I'm very pleased in the presentation, and thank you for the thoroughness, but this board is really interested in the exterior features, some of the material that are being used.
Gotcha.
The aesthetics.
Okay, so I'm going to give the floor to Tim then, and he can show what we're doing on the outside.
Are you going to go over the landscape plan?
Just quickly.
All right, so before that, could you go over the materials that are being used?
Yes. Would you like to go back to, I can do that in the elevations.
Elevations?
Yeah, the elevations. This is the top one is the street elevation, the east elevation. It's hard to see in this, on the computer. More clear on the model if you want to go back and look at that.
If you could
But
just keeping a record, so what are the materials?
the brick, it's not brick, it's a cultured stone similar to the police station, but a little bit more formal looking. It'll be grouted joints rather than dry stacked stones, but similar in color and texture. It's a cultured stone product, it's not real stone, but the colors and sizes would match. fairly closely to the police station. The solid above that is stucco, the tower is stucco, the roof is a slate tile. It's a composite look-alike, it's not real slate, but it looks so close you can't tell the difference. That's pretty much it, those three materials, cultured stone, stucco, and the slate tile roof. Stone again on those chimneys. What you see on top of the chimneys are not smokestacks or flues per se, they're light chimneys. So by using those light chimneys, we're gathering daylight and spreading it throughout the building. Same thing with that, what appears to be kind of a window around the top of the tower is not window, but it's cowl wall to allow translucent light into the top of the tower that'll be spread through all levels of the building. The garage doors, the bay doors themselves are insulated, well insulated with good insulated windows. The insulation value of those doors are even better than what used to be code for residential construction. So energy's always been a big concern of mine. We're constructing this building out of a product called ICF, insulated concrete forms. It's basically foam blocks that are stacked up like Lego parts, and we'll fill it full of concrete. It's very strong, formidable material that will last a very long time and perform very well thermally. Similarly, the foundation is going to be fully insulated, even the floor slab for energy reasons. Any other questions?
Do you have samples, Rick?
I don't have samples prepared for tonight, no.
I think that would be helpful if we could have those.
Not only samples, but like to see, I mean, you said something similar to the police department, but not necessarily the same aesthetic or design, or at least the stacking. Something visual in terms of the finished product.
You can get a mock-up of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the aesthetics, Brian, any comments?
No, I think the overall shape and the massing is quite handsome. The materials, again, I'm not clear. I would need to see them.
Okay.
I was expecting it to mimic the police station, and it's not. So I want to see what the difference is.
Is there a reason why you didn't go in that same direction?
Why I wouldn't mimic the police station?
Yes.
Sure. I didn't want it to look exactly the same as the police station. There should be some distinction between the two buildings.
Well, not looking identical and not asking, but some of the features and designs, material that was used, this board spent a lot of time really going over it. Even before the majority of the board members here recall the amount of time that went into just meeting after meeting after meeting, materials being used. A great deal of study went into the police department as constructed. So just wondering, we're just figuring, not asking for an identical or a twin, but maybe seeing some of that design also flow into what seems to be a shared driveway, shared building. Not shared building, but two separate locations sharing the same entryway. There's some similarities between the two.
There are similarities.
And also the exit and entryway. I see that driveway being extremely busy. Is there going to be any widening of the driveway?
No, the driveway was studied carefully and determined that it wouldn't be a detriment to have those vehicles using that driveway. One of the concerns was the hillside, and the reason we attempted to put the bays on the lower level was to avoid equipment driving up and down that hill. So that was our biggest concern, but the amount of traffic moving in and out was not a concern of the ambulance squad or the village. This project has been presented to the village board last spring, and they've been on board with the progress of the design since.
Okay. Christine, any comments?
No, I mean, I'd like to see a clearer picture of the finished product and how it fits into that context. I mean, this is very flat and one-dimensional. This is going to be a big building. It's going to make a big difference. We need definitely more detail.
Would you
Jeff?
like to see the 3D images again?
I'd like to see the materials, we'd like to see a mock-up of the exact materials that are being used, and necessarily,
Okay.
it would be easier. Jeff?
Will there be any radio towers or antennas or anything that's not on that diagram as we see it?
On the antennas, I'm expecting that there'll be minimal antennas, like one antenna on each end of those two chimneys, and I showed them on the.
That's a good point. I'd like to see
I
those.
showed them on the model,
presentation.
but they're not on the elevation yet. They're not determined to be a necessity, but I put them on the model because I think they'll probably end up there. The village didn't, the ambulance squad thinks that they will not need those because there are other plans.
Well, might I suggest this, that, and again, I'm not a radio engineer, but if there are, or if there will be a need for any antennas of any sort, that they be hidden within the architecture of the building. And I would imagine in today's world of technology, that's probably doable.
Well, there they are.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me, that's not particularly attractive.
Now, on the police station building, this sort of catwalk that we put on the top,
Right.
those were specifically designed to handle the antennas then. As time went by, they've kind of outgrown those antennas, and there's need for further antenna structures, maybe even on the site. So the village is talking about adding an antenna structure to the site in the future. This would probably be short-term, but again, they're my anticipated need and not something that was programmed by the ambulance squad.
But in all due respect, that doesn't resolve my concern that I would prefer to see a building without antennas, if that's at all doable.
Can we turn the lights on? Okay. Anything further about the elevations design? Anything further in terms of will be added to the property and accessory structures? Anything that we need to be concerned with? I'm sorry?
I think I've covered everything.
There's a landscape plan as well?
Yeah, just briefly, Mr. Chairman, Tim Rump from Aris Design. This is kind of what our concept is for how we're moving forward. One of the bigger items we've talked about with the ambulance in the village is that area in front of the ambulance garage doors will be heated for winter melting of the ice. There'll be some additional parking that will relate to both the fire station and the ambulance station, ambulance center. Additional landscaping in the back, and some additional landscaping below between Windmill Lane and the front of the
Is
street.
that a pond in the front?
No, we're exploring a bioswale similar to what we did at the Narrow Lane Fire Department, the new firehouse on Narrow Lane. These are just exploratory ideas now that we're working with the team.
Okay.
That's about it.
Any public comment on the application? Please step forward. Turn that podium. Give her a hand. No, be a gentleman.
Oh, actually, anyone could do it. Good evening, Susan Stevenson, I'm a village resident. I was at the original presentation in the spring.
It was free.
And I did have concerns about the materials or the look of the materials of the entire project, actually. It has a feeling to me of sort of an Adirondack style as opposed to something that would be more of vernacular in our village. And I don't actually remember when the police station got built, but I'm not, from my point of view, I'm not sure proceeding in that manner necessarily improves the look of that area, which is a fairly busy-looking area to start out with. That's just my opinion, but I did feel it looked, that it looks rather foreign. I don't see a lot of buildings around here that have stone or fake stone or whatever it is coming up, and then stucco or something that looks like stucco and black windows. And I feel it calls attention to itself in a way that doesn't fit into, I don't know, the feel of the downtown of the village. So it's my opinion only, though, but thank you.
Any more public comment? You'll be returning with some more details with regards to the material that are being used, taking consideration that some of the board members had some concerns about its appearance and in using this material, if it's in keeping with the overall downtown village of Southampton. Take that in consideration as well as you do a landscape, as you drive up and down and take a look at the vernacular of the community and see what you see. Anything further from the board?
No.
Anything further from the public? Motion to approve applicant's request to, you're going to request to adjourn, correct?
My understanding is that this was a presentation, not an application.
Then I'm confused. What do you mean by a presentation and not an application? You have an application.
I didn't fill out an application. So I'm not sure if this was an application presented by the
Well, there's a building permit in here. There's an application that was filled out. This is an application. You were under the assumption that it was just a presentation and you were going to just do it?
Yes, sir, I was.
That's not the case. Counsel, I don't even know where to go with
I've got the
that.
answer to this question. I don't even know what the facts are. Who signed the building permit application?
I don't know the scribble. Counsel?
As far as the board knows at the moment, Rick, there does need to be an application.
I was told differently.
Okay, just like the fire department, police department, the ambulance, the tower, the clock tower. Even though it's the Village of Southampton is the applicant, it still has to come before the ARB for
One
aesthetics.
would think.
One would hope.
So we're adjourning.
One would hope.
Sorry?
Are we adjourning?
It would have to be.
I mean, the trustees have a great deal of weight with this board, but it's not an axiomatic
Linda, somebody
application.
No, that's the
Okay.
notary. That's the notary.
I don't object to it, I'm just
As in,
here for the convenience of the board at this moment.
okay, so conveniently, we're going to convene to the next meeting. Motion to adjourn until our next meeting.
I make a motion that we adjourn the application of Village of Southampton for the ambulance barn to be adjourned to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application, please.
Ricky L. Associates, 230 Bishop's Lane.
Are we on Ricky Associates now?
Yes.
Can we hold up a second and get rid of all that stuff over there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the
evening.
board. My name is Tony Murolo. I represent Ricky L. Associates, and I'm here to talk about 230 Bishop's Lane. Based on our last meeting, there were some comments made. I'd like to address those comments.
Bless you.
I don't know if you guys have this.
We have nothing new in the file. What you're presenting now, is it any alterations or changes from these?
Changes based on the comments made last time.
Do you have elevations that demonstrates the changes as well, or it's just?
Correct.
That.
So in reference to the last meeting, there were three main concerns. The gable heights, the roof above the carport, and the appearance of the front door look. So we addressed those three issues. As you can see, we reduced the original height we had was such. So we reduced the heights of those gables. The carport, there was a concern about possibly having a deck somebody can break through. We changed that roof line, and we also changed the front door look. In reference to the height of the building, we're still at 32 feet, which is on page 6 of the, actually page 5, 6, sorry. It's the architecturals. Yeah, page 5 of the architecturals, which indicates 32 foot to the ridge.
See the building plan.
Could you share with me, or with us, the rough dimensions of the house? Because I can't make it out on this. The length, the width, and the height of the first and second floors?
Well, the height to the ridge is 32 feet.
No, just the length, the width,
68
so 70 roughly
by approximately, oh, it's 50, I'm sorry. So it's 68 by, what is that?
Brian?
The carport? The carport crashing into the house? Yeah. I'm still struggling with this one. It's still, to me, looking like two houses. You know, you've got a grand eave on the first floor, and then another grand eave on the second floor, so your roofs don't have a chance of tying in correctly together. And the carport is, you know, coming up in front of the house like that. It's just not, there's no
Well, no,
harmony
it really
there.
faces the rear of the house. You look at the aerial view.
It's still part of the house.
Esther?
I don't know what to...
I think you're headed in the right direction, but I think that there's still work to be done, and to be perfectly honest, we have a very long agenda. I kind of need to really think about this, and I think the public also really needs to have it in the file in order for them to take a look at it and for us to hear public comment at our next meeting. But I am troubled by the carport, and I'm troubled by the way the three ridges are incorporated in the main roof line of the house. I don't really understand how it works.
Christine?
I'm having difficulty really understanding the massing of this house looks out of scale, and I don't, the carport adds to that. The roof line, I'm struggling with this design. I really am.
Jeff?
I remain concerned about the mass, and a quick calculation is that this is like somewhere in the neighborhood of 65, 70,000 cubic feet on a half-acre lot, which is a pretty good size house on a half-acre.
Smaller than some other lots.
That may very well be.
Okay. Well, it's, actually, it's a little disconcerting that you don't seem to like the design, since I've been through it 3 times already.
Yeah, no,
This is
I
the
can
second
appreciate
style we've presented.
Well, it's the second interpretation of the same style.
Well, there was three
You
comment.
reduced the gables, but it's still incorporated into the house, which is out of character and out of scale. Just visually looking at it, the carport, I have no idea where any of that ties into the overall design of the house itself. It looks like you cut off half the roof to make it looks like to make accommodations for a form of second-story deck, but you incorporate it with an additional flat roof on top. Overall, there's no symmetry behind the carport, the front gables, in conjunction with the overall style of the house. I don't see it. And it doesn't seem like the other board members see it as well. We all pretty much feel the same. We've said this several times that those three gables all read independent, grand. You've reduced them, which was a direction, at least direction in the right direction, but I think it's not to a point where we feel satisfied with the final product.
Well, then I need a little more specifics, because I understood last time there was three issues: door, gables, carport.
I think we've mentioned all three of those tonight.
Right. Okay, so I addressed again, if the carport is not your design, then you gotta draw up something that tells me what you need.
We're not a design board.
I know, but you're leaving me.
We're an architectural review board. Our job is to review what you present before us. What you presented is something that, as a 5-panel board, we're unable to go behind and support.
It's very arbitrary, and it's very expensive to keep doing this every time I come. It's just been since July 13th. So I'm going to continue doing it, but I need a little more direction, and that you just don't like it. Do you want to see a gable on the carport? What do you want to see? Do you want to see Victorian look? Do you want to see a Dutch look?
I think
we
less
had
is
Dutch
more.
before, and I know Mr. Brady didn't like the fact that it was bumped out, so we pushed it back. I don't know where to go next. So I need a little more direction.
We start with less is more. I understand the grant. Well, bottom line is, you're doing what you probably were told to do. Present a grand house, correct? House that has some street presence, grand in nature, and you were successful in doing that, which is kind of the issue we're having, because it has a grand look from the street. That's what you were asked and requested to do. We're asking to scale it down and get more symmetry in terms of the front gables. The carport, simple. Simple is best. Simplify it. Doesn't necessarily have to have a design, and especially a design that's really not in keeping with any of the roof lines of the existing house, of the house being proposed, rather.
Okay, so the carport, if I put a gable on there, is that okay?
A gable on a
Well, I'm
carport?
trying to understand, because I pitched the roof to keep away from the fact that there might be a second-story deck. So we pitched the roof to avoid that. So now it just doesn't fit.
Question is, why is it not? Why can't it just be a covering?
Excuse me?
Why can't the carport just be a covering? Why does it have to have such dramatic roof lines?
Well, I had a flat roof before and it wasn't acceptable, so that's why I'm a little confused.
No, we only asked, was it accessible, and to make sure that it doesn't become accessible. I think that's what we were discussing before. You decided to create a roof line on the carport. That's not something this board suggested, and I believe it was in any of the reports that we discussed at the last meeting. Brian, as the architect on the board, obviously we're not a design board, but are there any suggestions that you could lead in a better direction so that we can stop with the continual discussion on especially the front gables and the carport?
Yeah. The front gables, I just think that the three of them are just not in harmony with each other. You've got the one major one in the front, which is getting smaller every time we see it, but you still have the two on the side. Why do you have to have three? Why not just do a simple gable in the middle and make it a nice traditional house?
Okay, well, Dutch gable? Is that okay? Doesn't matter?
It doesn't
But
matter.
I loved the Dutch look before. I changed it to this Victorian
What's
kind
the
of.
Dutch look?
Yeah,
A gamble.
you had that,
Gamble.
well,
Yeah,
you had that
but-
bell
I say
front.
Dutch, I'm sorry.
Did you recall the bell
Dutch
front
colonial,
gable?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Actually, the rear elevation without the carport is probably the most successful because it's the simplest and it has some symmetry. So I'd go in the direction of the rear elevation.
Yeah.
It's just much more pleasing to the senses than the
Okay, that's
front,
good-
which
good
is
point. I
so
appreciate that.
busy. But I'd lose the carport. I don't know, it looks like a little Japanese pagoda on the side. So if that's helpful,
Okay.
simpler,
And
smaller.
instead of gables, going with dormers,
You know,
front dormers.
if he wants to do a gambrel and then dormers on the sides,
Yeah.
Better.
and then just do a railing on there.
A railing on the carport?
Yeah.
Reduced railing, reduced railing.
Yeah, not
With a flat
36
roof.
inches
Flat
tall.
roof. That's what we said last meeting. I mean, we said reduce the railing, flat roof, and make it non-accessible. And then you came back with a,
Trying to make it non-accessible, so the flat roof is always accessible, even if there's no window there.
Yeah, but if
climb
your
out the
railings,
window.
if your
You wanna
railings
climb
are
out the
30
window and-
inches or, 24 inches or something like that, then it's not legal.
Okay. That's fine. All right, I appreciate
any
it.
public comment on the application?
No, they haven't seen it.
Well,
That's true.
I don't know if there's going to be comment, they didn't see it. Anything further from the board? Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn the application of Ricky.
Motion to approve applicant's request
I
to
make a
adjourn.
motion that we approve the applicant's request, Ricky L. Associates of 230 Bishop's Lane, to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know how you're gonna get all this in there.
Okay.
Next application, please.
Drew Schuttinger, 166 Corrigan.
Good evening. I'm Jeremy Hubble, here to speak about 166 Corrigan Street. This is our fourth appearance in front of the board. Previously, at your suggestion, your concerns originally were concerned with the mass of the house. And we changed from a gambrel, which can sometimes look a little barn-like and a little boxy, to a double gable. We've lowered the roof line 2 times. We're now at 26 feet 11 inches, well below the 30 feet allowable. Maybe most importantly, we lopped off 7 feet off the front elevation. So I think we've addressed the massing issues. At our last meeting, you made 2 last recommendations, which we've adhered to and submitted last week. The first was architectural, and Brian had suggested that we make a change to the roof over the entranceway. The front entrance, it was originally had a slight curve to it. Brian suggested that a simple shed covering would be preferable, and so we have done that. The plans that we submitted last week and the rendering reflect that, and we're suggesting that this would probably look best with a simple copper roof over that front entranceway. That's really the only architectural change that we made. This rendering also now reflects the proper treatment of that gable to reflect the drawings. The shed dormer is set back from the front ridge line. You also requested that we prepare a streetscape.
Is this the scale?
It is.
Who prepared the streetscape?
I don't actually know his name. It was through our architect, Jeff Zahn. Jeff
Only
was...
reason why it's not certified as being to scale. There's no certification from an architect that they actually presented.
I
or
didn't realize that was
prepared.
required. Okay. My architect was planning to be here, but he had a family emergency, so he is not here. But this was done through professionals that he arranged for.
My issue with receiving information is that if it can't be authenticated, what's to say it's accurate?
Mhm.
I think if we're going to do this, if we're responsible for a duty and a responsibility and a direction, if we're just going through the motions, accepting information without being able to authenticate whether it's accurate, then why are we here? So I would want to see something certified to say this is the scale.
Okay.
If it was a part of a requirement of the board, then it should be something that it would be able to be supported, substantiated as being accurate.
Okay, well, let me, I think the purpose of this was to show the house in relationship to the rest of the street. So let me proceed and just describe that just a little bit, if I may. What was asked for was that we do 4 houses to the left and 4 houses to the right as you face 166 Corrigan, which is right here in the middle. There are actually 18 houses on this street from Moses Lane, which would be, just to orient you, would be at this end here. I think it's 4 or 5 houses up would be the intersection with Moses, and Hill Street down at this end. So this actually represents about half the street, and the street is composed of single-family homes and 2-story homes, as well as a few vacant lots. And as you can see, this is actually represented fairly accurately in these 9 homes, which are a mixture of 2-story single, 2 single, 2-story, 2-story, a vacant lot, 2 single-story, and another double lot. And if we were to continue, that sort of rhythm would remain. So the street is somewhat in transition. Some of these single-family homes, single-story homes, excuse me, are being replaced with 2-story homes. I think just at the last meeting, there was an approval of a single-story home, just 3 more houses down to the right, which was being expanded to and becoming a 2-story home. So what this shows is that there is this sort of uneven rhythm in the street. We feel that our house fits in as well as any house.
Considering that you represent 3 of the homes that are in 2-story there,
well,
I would say it does fit into rhythm.
The rhythm exists, and we are not, as I say, these 2 homes, which are 2-story. There are half the homes on the street are already 2-story homes, and there are actually 5 homes on the street that are taller than ours. So this house, the other thing that is really not reflected in the elevation, but I want to point out, which is particular about this lot, is that the topography is such that, and this shows us all on a straight line, but the street is fairly level, but right through here is actually the lowest point on Corrigan Street. So the street comes down, and there is somewhat of a dip right here. It's not a severe dip, but it is a lowering, and then it rises back up to Moses Lane. So that this house actually sits 3 feet higher, just because of the topography, than 166. 166 is a couple of feet lower, the house itself, at 26 feet 11. And it will sit down lower on the lot, or the lot itself is lower, with the resulting effect being it's going to appear about 4 or 5 feet lower than its neighbor, its immediate neighbor. The other particular characteristic of this lot is that, for whatever reason, it's really one of the most thoroughly landscaped lots currently on the street. There's some very heavily hedged houses down near Hill Street. This lot enjoys some very mature arborvitaes on all 4 sides, providing a green wall of screening. They're, I think, 14 or 15 feet in the front and as high as 18 or 20 feet in the rear. It's a little hard to see, but these are photographs of the existing lot. As you can see, these trees there's some beautiful street trees, as well as these tall arborvitaes, so that the house itself is going to be fairly hidden, quite hidden from the street, and even from its neighbors. It's just naturally screened that way.
All of the trees that are currently on their property, you plan to repurpose?
I'm sorry,
all of the planting trees that are currently on the property, you're planning to repurpose?
We're actually saving all the arborvitaes. We only have to take down some shorter ones that are where the curb cut would be. We've actually redesigned the curb cut so that we could save.
You have a proposed landscape plan,
yes,
right?
It's in there.
So
it's been presented before. So that curb cut would come where there are very low arborvitaes right now. We're saving all of the taller ones, and there will be complete screening across the front, except for that curb cut where the driveway comes in. We submitted the landscaping plan previously, but I do have this kind of a site plan for your reference. So we feel we've adhered to your requirements, and the house has been well received in the neighborhood. Our neighbors, we haven't had any opposition here, and in fact we've had some support from many neighbors, both verbally and in writing. We submitted some letters of support. We think we're building a very attractive, appropriate, traditional, classic house. The rendering, I'm not crazy about the coloring of the rendering, but it is a cedar shingle, natural cedar shingle roof and natural cedar shingle siding, so it will weather very nicely. And it's a very traditional, classic style home.
Thank you. Any public comment on the application? Brian, any comments?
No, I like the change to the front. I think it added some good design elements to the house. I'm fine with it.
Esther?
I don't really love the diamond windows above the front entry. I think the shed roof is definitely an improvement. I'm still not particularly fond of the eyebrow at the top, but it's definitely improvement over where we were before.
Christine?
This was very helpful. No, I like the changes that you made.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Along with Esther, I am aesthetically, the windows and the eyebrow are an issue, but I'm concerned with this one, as with others, about the mass of the house. And the streetscape, yes, portrays a transition, a neighborhood in transition, but it's, to some extent, Corrigan Street is more in revolt than transition. And as Curtis pointed out, the fact that there are some very large houses are the houses that you built. And there were some objections by the neighbors at the very first meeting. So there were some concerns, and there were some concerns of this board. This is roughly, what, 18,000 square feet, this is a lot?
It's 20,000.
20,000. It says on there
I think it's
17,000.
close to 20, about 20,000.
A couple of thousand feet.
So roughly 100 by 200.
Okay.
It's 17,714.
Right.
There's a little, I think in the far left corner, there's a little, it's not perfectly square, there's a town sump back there, I think, and maybe it cuts off the back.
So I can
left corner.
only go by the plan,
Yep.
so it says 18,000 square feet. So when I look at this house, and when I do my simple calculation, it's a lot of house on a very small lot, even more so than the one we previously referenced. And on that street, between the house that you've built to the south and this one, it will be visible from the street. It's a very small lot, and when I drive down there, quite honestly, the morning sunlight is hidden from the street. Coming from the east, the houses are so high that it changes the streetscape, which isn't reflected in that, and thank you for bringing that along. But I think a house of this size is going to change the streetscape even more so than it is now. So my desire would be a house that would be more in keeping with the size of the lot.
Well, I think we tried to address mass, and we have lowered the roof line twice. We're down at 2611, and I think if you look again at this lot, the lot does sit down lower. I think this house will appear smaller than the house to the right, 154. It certainly is going to sit lower. It is a smaller house. It's been reduced in size. The front elevation is now 7 feet smaller than when we started. So we tried to, even though what we originally presented was allowable, we did try hard to address those issues. And the landscaping, I think, is really will hide this house a great deal. I think it's a very pretty house, and I think it's part of that's too bad. You're only going to see this really when you stand sort of opposite the driveway, because those are very tall arborvitaes and very deep screening on both sides and to the rear. I am aware that at the very first meeting, someone did appear and was concerned about the massing of the house. They actually are from Harvest Lane, which is behind us. That is a predominantly two-story neighborhood, and in fact, they live in a two-story house that is, those homes have ridge lines that are higher than this house, and with it in the back, we have 20-foot high arborvitae, so I really don't think that for that one person who lives behind us in a larger house that we're going to be a problem for them. I think we do fit into the streetscape. The streetscape is an irregular streetscape, and so.
Can I respond now?
And I think it's moving in the direction.
I understand and you have come with information and letters from people in support of. I have the ones that come knocking on my front door and saying, "What are you doing to my street?" And quite frankly, they feel that they've surrendered and they've given up, and they're concerned that the street of Corrigan, between the threat of a supermarket, which has nothing to do between this board, but also the streetscape of what is being allowed to be built, they feel like they've surrendered the neighborhood in terms of the overall aesthetic. So what you don't hear is what I hear, and I hear.
We have spoken to an awful lot of our neighbors,
sure
and we've
you
heard
have.
positive things from them. So
Sure you have.
I've not heard any of those objections.
Okay, again, my door, they knock on. With that said, I don't have an issue with the design of the home. I just have an issue with how it plays on this very small lot and the community, quite frankly, that you're changing. It's that it's changing or evolving because a bunch of people who've decided, oh my God, let me build in this community and let me live. You've come and you've changed a lot of the aesthetics. You represent probably about 40% of the change in two-story homes that are within this community, and I'm sure will continue to do so and present. So there's an evolution going on. Again, and I said it before and I'll say it again, if a person comes before this board as either a spec builder or a person who's building a home to live there, it's irrelevant. But if you're changing the overall scope of a community, that's where it becomes relevant. And I think that that's what's happening with these various homes that are being built. And quite frankly, it still goes back to all the issues that we've had before this board pretty much every month. Large homes, small lots, something has to be done. Personally, if you have the votes, fine. I wouldn't be in favor of the home as submitted because of the various things that I've said this evening. So, Brian, did you have an issue with the application?
No, I don't.
Esther?
I'm still not comfortable with it.
Christine?
I'm not completely comfortable.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like you have the votes this evening for the application to move forward. And there's some issues about window, mass, that still have to be answered to. Your overall mass issue, Esther, I know you've mentioned about the window.
I'm looking at the site plan, I'm also looking at the landscape plan, and just for clarification, you mentioned 20-foot arborvitae at the rear of the property, but on the plan it says 16-foot arborvitae at the rear and at the back it says existing 10 to 12-foot arborvitae.
No, there are some much taller ones back there. I may actually have some pictures from looking out at the rear of the property.
Well, that's only part of
That would be
the
helpful.
issue. I think that the primary issue is still the size of the house on the lot, and I think that you've certainly made efforts in the right direction. I'm still concerned about some of the architectural elements.
You know, I'm a little struggling here in that, yes, this was is a single-story home. Yes, we have built 2 homes on this street. The changes on the street are not something that are, being imposed by us. I mean, this is happening throughout the village. It's happening on the street. At the last meeting, a single-story home was approved to be converted to a 2-story home.
you're giving comparison. What was the lot size? I mean, you're talking about another application, and
Well,
I'm talking about, we're referring to yours, and
Okay.
this particular application.
But you did speak to the fact that we were changing the neighborhood. The neighborhood is changing, and the neighborhood's going to continue to change. And, you know, I feel we care very much about this neighborhood, and we want to fit into it, and we've tried very hard to make our design and our massing work, not only with what's there, but where the street is going. Because I think we can't deny that the street is changing and going to change. There's also some vacant lots on this street. And you know, building a single-story home here is really probably not what's going to
I
happen
don't think
here.
anyone
So-
on this board, I don't think anyone, well, you said that 3 times now. No one on this board has mentioned build another single-story home. No one on this board has said not to build a 2-story home. The question is the mass by which you decided to build your 2-story home and how it plays on the lot and neighboring property. Quite frankly, I'm still looking at a streetscape. I'm speaking for me personally. I'm looking at a streetscape that I can't authenticate at all. I know what I've seen when I drive up and down the road. It would be nice to have it in terms of a presentation before the board. At this point, still, it's incomplete. That's just my only, we have heights of trees and shrubs as well as arborvitae there on the site plan that are not accurate. Someone told me once when I was presenting an application, if 1 or 2 errors, then I question the whole entire application. I'm not saying that particularly about your application, I'm just saying that nothing's been authenticated. So in order for me to be a little more at ease, I would need to make sure that the design, the finished product that you're proposing on this lot in this community fits in, ties in, and will not have a negative impact overall. That's me. You had other board members that mentioned their other concerns and their issues. At this point, it's your discretion on what direction to go.
Well, I'd appreciate some more guidance on the architect. Can we return to the architecture briefly? I know that Esther was not here at the last meeting where we talked about some of these issues, including both the eyebrow and the roof over the entrance. Can I get some guidance as to what would satisfy you all concerning the architecture?
This board had no issue. This board had very minimum issue with the architecture. There were a few windows that had issue with the diamond pane being
the
one, the
diamond
eyebrow
pane and the
above. But overall, I think it has been echoed over and over again. It's mess.
And what would you suggest relative to the mass? Because we made
Something is too big, reduce it. That's again, you have 5-panel board. It's your discretion on how to move forward. It's your discretion on how you wish to move forward as the applicant.
Well, determining that scale would be helpful, because when we were here last, even 2 times ago, we sensed that you asked us to reduce the ridgeline for a second time, which we did. So we're now at 26 feet 11, which I think is a reasonable ridgeline. Is height an issue? Does height remain to be an issue? And I do want to point out that I think there are 4 or 5 other homes on this street that have higher roof lines. Yes, we built 2 of them that were approved recently. There is a house that was just the expansion, I think, has a roof line of 31 feet. We're down at 26.11. So it gets, for a 2-story house, it does get difficult to reduce that ridge line any further. Is the ridge line, we've reduced the left to right elevation of the home. We're down 7 feet less than what the setbacks provide for. So, I mean, those are the 2 key elements of massing that we can deal with, and we've dealt with, I think, quite substantially. So I'm trying to understand why this is still an issue. And I think if you go by the lot, you will see that the house will be fairly well hidden. Whether that's how relevant that is, I don't know. But I mean, the house is very well screened.
I think to some extent you've answered your question, which is mass is the result of three variables: width,
Right,
length,
width.
and height. So it's not just one. It may be 1, 2, or 3, or any combination thereof. I don't think we're in a position, and I'm new, so I don't want to speak out of turn in terms of dictating what those should be. But if you ask, you've got to change the mix in some way to reduce the mass.
I understand that.
I'm
I'm
sorry
trying
for being
to get a
simplistic.
sense of degree since we've already done that on 2 occasions, including reducing the overall square footage.
I think
So-
if you look at the survey and you look at the amount of open space that is not covered by the arborvitae on the perimeter, and may I say that's really the only landscaping other than the ornamentational landscaping right in the front of the house of small plantings. But if you look at what is available that is not built on the lot between the driveways, the parking area, the pool house, the patio, the roof over the patio, there's very little ground, earth. That, if that's helpful at all, that's what I would look at. You're maximizing the coverage on the lot. And I think all of us collectively would like to see you somehow reduce that.
Well, I understand that is helpful. I mean, one of the issues is that to provide for the parking and to do the driveway the way we did, it actually ended up with more driveway surface and less grass, but we thought that satisfied a different requirement on your all's part. Okay, we will go back to the drawing board.
And we do appreciate it. You're almost there. I mean, when I go back in the file, and I did miss the last meeting because of Rosh Hashanah, you're almost there. So we do appreciate your efforts. But if some houses that were approved that perhaps are not something that give everybody pleasure, we'd like to move forward in the right direction. So we do appreciate your help.
I'll go back to the original comment. I don't think that there's a great issue with the overall design of the house. It's a nice house on a small lot. So you literally utilizing the entire available space, and you're trying to put as much as you can on a small envelope. It has an impact. And at some point, sometime, we as a board have to start, I made a comment a couple of meetings ago that I had an issue saying to turn down an application because of mass. I'm starting to be persuaded that at some point, sometime, if it's not going to get done in the manner that it should, and that's changing code, we need to start doing something.
Well, it is difficult to navigate between code and setbacks and all of those requirements.
It
that
absolutely is.
We're well down from and substantially below in all respects, and then, this issue. So I know you're in a difficult position
It's
with
a
that.
very difficult
It puts us in a difficult position, too, in terms of trying to, mutually arrive at something that is acceptable. And so we will try again. I appreciate the feedback that you've received, that you've given, and we will see you at the next meeting. Does that mean I request an adjournment?
Yes.
Is that
You got it.
correct?
You're learning.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant's Drew Schuttinger's request at 166 Corrigan Street, request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next
Thank
up-
you.
thank
Can I just ask one question? Architecturally, Esther, the windows, is it the sense of the board that the diamonds would be better to be
Eliminated,
removed? We thought it
yeah.
was an architectural detail that was appreciated, but
I would make them compatible with all the other windows. That would be a huge improvement in my opinion.
And there was discussion last time concerning the benefit of the eyebrow, and we came away feeling that the eyebrow was preferred.
You have to understand the application at this point was closed.
Thank
If
you.
you want
Appreciate it.
substantive information, we would have to reopen the application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application, please.
Next application, Gail Belva, 74 Post Lane.
evening.
I have more renderings if you need.
Okay.
I've seen it.
Just to let you, I don't know if you were at the last meeting. That's what it looked like. I'm sorry? Proceed.
Mike Chiappi, representing Gail Belver at 74 Post Lane. We were here 2 weeks ago and got thrown down the stairs.
Sorry?
I said got thrown down the stairs. We made some major changes to the home. We had that long tower structure with the big windows in the front, kind of a postmodern look, which we got rid of. Mr. Brady kind of recommended a independent dormer up there, which I kind of took that idea and ran with, which kind of dictated the new design of the front of the home. We got rid of those large windows, replaced them with two smaller awning windows in that dormer, and below that two double hung windows to match the windows to the left and right. We got rid of the stone chimney and made it a brick chimney, which was on the left. And in the back, we took the deck rails and lowered them to 24 inches to make it so it was not can be converted into a deck later on. We also got rid of the stone in the back too, where the bump out fireplace was.
I don't think we had an issue with the fireplace.
No, not the fireplace, we left that, but we had stone on it. You didn't,
Okay.
It was the cultured
Okay.
stone that was the issue.
Did you want the tile?
No, or the plan, just the,
Brian, was it successful?
It's getting close. I mean, it's getting a little bit more manageable, don't you think?
It's a generic full wall brick box 2.5-story home with a bunch of hips.
And that's what was my, kind of the goal was to simplify it.
It's still not simple.
Oh, it's still not simple.
No, it's far from simple. It's very busy. It's very, very busy. There's so much going on
This
here.
should be in the file. Here. This is here. What was the height? What was the ridge height?
30 feet. It originally was 34,
Yeah.
and we came the day after that code was changed, and then had to redo everything again. So it is at 30 feet. I try to give it a little bit of a traditional feel, and I have driven around the neighborhood many times to see some of the features that are brought up there. I mean, are we looking at maybe the Corbels, maybe the AZAC on that sunroom? We can eliminate some of that if that's going to tone it down a bit.
Brian, what do you think? There are a number of different roof pitches.
Yeah, the problem is it's trying to be a four-square house, and it's not, because you have so many gables going on in the front. So if you eliminate the two gables on either side and just have a nice simple eave running across there, that'll be a help. But then your dormer's too big.
Gotcha.
So that needs to be toned down. It's still very, very, very top-heavy. And that's just the front. Right?
Mrs. Pastor?
I mean, the Foursquare is a classic Southampton house. So if you would use that as the model and keep it as simple as you possibly can, every elevation has so many elements going on that I don't even really know where to go with this. You know, you've got this curved entryway, you've got all these different elements for the gables. The side door has a little swooping curved roof line. You have the second story over the sunroom is actually, you know, rather simple and nice. But I don't know, is this an accessible deck? How high is that?
No, it's not. That was an issue.
Okay, so that's a sure thing. That number 4 with the window in the middle, that would be far more successful if you kept those windows uniform. What do you?
There's a roof over nothing.
And I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's a
It's a bump
jut
out for a fireplace,
fireplace.
Oh, that's the
probably.
fireplace?
It's the bump out for the fireplace.
But above that bump out for the fireplace is a window that relates to nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of inside, it's a clear story, goes up to about 20 feet, and that's above the fireplace. So it's like a balcony from above, and it goes up to the second
But
floor
from the
ceiling.
outside, it's just not successful. And then next to that side entrance, I'm not sure what that is. Is that window?
Okay.
Oh, that's, the garden window.
I don't know where that relates to anything. So again, my comments would be take a look at a classic 4-square and just really simplify it.
Christine?
Yes, I think that, thank you for the changes that you've made,
Oh.
but this is such a box. It's so, somehow the proportions look wrong from the front. And this particular view here,
The rear
the
view.
rounded window, you cut the railings down, but somehow the whole proportion of the house just doesn't look right.
We're adjourning everything.
What can I say?
Jeff?
Sharing some of the opinions that some of the other folks said, Esther in particular, about the 4-square being traditional. I think, I don't know whether the current count in the village is 80 or 94 squares, but to the suggestion, drive around, take a look at them. They, although they are, and do it quickly because we seem to be destroying them as quickly as they are. They're a dying breed. And then I say that somewhat in jest and somewhat in disgust as well. And that's perhaps too strong a word, but regret. What makes a 4-square work, and I'm not an architect, but what it works, the reason it works for me visually is its simplicity.
It's a box.
But it's
It does-
it's a simple box. What you've created here, in my mind, is, I won't say the worst of all worlds, but you've tried to take what's otherwise a simple traditional design and throw everything in there. And I think that's what some of the comments reflect here. So drive around, take a look at those 4 squares. They're beautiful, and people
Look at
love
a new house that just went up on the corner of Elm and Pelletreau. It's a 4-square, and we actually worked with them for months, and they finally got it right. I think it's a pretty successful design, and it's got a lot of the elements that you're trying to achieve in there. So just take a look at that one.
Okay.
I get this 3rd-story dormer. You want to make it, you know, you want more light, you want more true light. You're trying to really bring in that 3rd story and the features for the 3rd story. The issue is that you've taken as it's been stated over and over again, a simple form, and you've taken the top of it and made it very complex. So it doesn't. There's no relation between what's happening on the roof and what's happening in the lower end of the house. It's just it crescendos into this thing at the top from your roof lines, and the various roofs, the dormer that's way too big for the house to begin with. If you look at the rear of the house, it looks like a condo. It looks like if you take a condo, and you add levels to it, that's the relation or the style that I'm seeing from just looking at the. So yeah, please ride around Southampton Village, take a good look at, and it's as stated before, simple is better, less is more. And if simplicity and 4 square is really what you're interested in doing, And I know you want to put some flair in it, because I see that flair is what you're looking for. You can do it responsibly. That's all we're asking.
The ridge line of your dormer should not be at the same height as the ridge line of the house. It should read subservient to that, so it reads as a dormer sitting in the roof. It's not part of it.
I did that to try to give her that sight through the balcony of that third floor.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying, just bring it down.
Any public comment on the application? Please step forward.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Gail, sorry. I'm Gail Belva. I'm the owner of the home. I met the three of you 2 weeks ago. I own my home 20 years. I'm very respectful of the neighborhood. And when we came 2 weeks ago, we asked for commentary on what we could do that would make it acceptable. We were told three things. We were not told about the dormer in the back. We were actually told that you're more concerned about the way it looks in front. Anything that was recommended 2 weeks ago, we did. Even though, and now you're coming back with more things that if you had told us 2 weeks ago, we would have tried to accommodate you. And frankly, I have a little bit of a problem with trying to keep with the tradition of Southampton when you allow this house at 131 Post Lane, which is an ultra-contemporary, to be built, and then you're telling me we're not in keeping with our neighborhood. I don't understand. This house at 131 Post Lane, this is the driveway of that, the garage of that house. Lovely, huh?
Ma'am,
These are,
I see
okay,
that, but-
no, but the point is, I know you're not reviewing an application for 131. You've already done that. I've walked down to the end of that street many times while that house was being built. And they got that approved by you, you know, good for them. But I can't see that my house is a detriment to my street if you can approve this. And I then went on the internet and I looked at other houses that were in the area, and I know that you're not approving any of the other applications, but I can give you pictures of plenty of other houses that do not have the four-square look, that are on the same lot as mine, who have rotunda-type entrances and three-story facades on the outside that this board has approved recently, that are all within, you know, maybe a half a mile or a mile from my house. And I don't understand the inequity of you being able to approve other homes that are certainly not in keeping with Post Lane or the neighborhood, and then have a problem with the home that we're trying to build. I appreciate the...
Yeah, I'm giving you light, and I've given you some time to speak. And as you stated so accurately, we're not viewing those applications, and I don't know the specifics of those applications. I know what your application is being proposed now, and your architect or your representative has come before this board to present before us what's supposed to be a traditional home, and what he's presented we have some issue with.
So if I were to build a contemporary, that would be in keeping with the
I
neighborhood?
will tell you this, you can propose anything you wish before this board. Doesn't mean it will be approved. We're not a design board, we're a review board. So we're reviewing the application. There were issues that we've had with this particular application. We've asked the applicant to do a little bit more modifications to make it more in keeping. This application, I don't have reference, nor do I have any comments about any other applications that we may have approved in the past.
We changed every comment that you told us 2 weeks ago that you wanted changed, we changed. And now we come back 2 weeks later, and all of a sudden, it's the back of the house, it's the window in the great room. Those were not comments.
Every application and every presentation leaves us the ability to look at the application completely and make recommendations or make suggestions. It doesn't matter what was said at the last. We're making a case now so that every time we look and review an application, we have the right. It's an open application. We have a right to look at it as objectively as possible, but as fully as possible as well. So maybe at 9, 10 o'clock in the evening at the previous meeting, we didn't see as much detail that it becomes more relevant to us today, but we have the right to review the application completely. And that's what we're doing this evening.
Okay, are there any other recommendations you might want to make to us so that when we come back the next time, we're not faced with new issues that are going to pop up in front of us?
I will say this board has made its comments this evening, but I'll say it one more time. The application is open and therefore left open for discussion from both public as well as this board. And we would have to take in consideration what will be presented to us at the next meeting.
My last comment is I do not understand how you could approve this ultra-contemporary that ruins the whole look of this street that I've owned my house
Again,
for 20 years,
I don't
and
know
you
what
have
the
problems
content of that
with this.
application was. I don't know. I don't know any part of that application right now. We are talking about your application.
I
We could sit
understand.
here all night long and compare applications that were approved and disapproved. As a matter of fact, we talked about applications that were approved on a particular block about an application ago. That we said, you know what, quite frankly, you're right, that should never have been approved, on Corrigan Street being one of them. It happens. We're all human. We're a board that's trying to do the best we can on a voluntary basis to look at probably 30 to 40 applications on an evening and do the best that we possibly can. Now, if we looked at yours at 12 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night or even 11 o'clock at night with tired eyes, maybe we missed one or two things, and we apologize for that. We are human, and we're allowed to do so, which is the reason why we keep the record open. We looked at the application this evening. We saw things that need to be adjusted in order for us to feel happy and successful in approving the application.
And 2 weeks ago, you made the comment that you weren't as concerned about the back of the house, it was mainly the front. Now you seem to have been more concerned about the back of the house than the front of the house.
We look at again, I'm sorry, ma'am, and I understand your frustration, and it's unfortunate. I understand your frustration. You want to move forward with the application. You want to be able to build your house. And it's very difficult to hear that now it's going to delay another 2 weeks. We apologize, but we have a responsibility. And we, as a board, a panel of 5, at this particular time, don't feel comfortable moving forward with the application as it's submitted.
I understand.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Anything further from the board? So you'll be doing some adjustments, come back with designs that are more in keeping, and you're asking this board to adjourn so you can prepare yourself, correct?
Thank you.
Motion to approve the applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant Gail Belva's request at 74 Post Crossing to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All
Post
in-
Lane.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application, please.
Next application is 70 Pheasant Close East LLC.
John Laffey, agent architect for the applicant. These are little plans I had submitted to the board, I guess Friday or last week. And last time we received before the board, you had some comments about trying to make the, can you hear me? Trying to make the entry a bit more understated, maybe a little less severe. The last entry, as you, oh, sorry. Last time the entry had a series of white panels all around it, and it was fairly aggressive. So we've tried to tone it down by taking out we reduced the size of the window and its window design. We simplified all those light cuts over there. We've taken the white trim out that used to be around it, and we've shingled it all the way around. So we tried to reduce its scale in that capacity. The windows also are a bit smaller. There used to be 3 light divides across. Now there are 2. And we've simplified the main window section of it, where there used to be the transom windows above. We've taken that out. The other comments were the house was maybe a little too many ovals in the front facade. So we can see where in the side door over here, there used to be windows that would match the front. We've taken those out and made side lights out of them, so it's more vertical, and we've attached, they're attached with panels, so they're more in kind with the front door detailing. And then there were 2 windows. These are 2 small wheeler bathrooms in the front of the house. They used to also have ovals in them, and we've made little rectangular windows out of them. And we've put some little lights in those. I think they're little jewels on the side of the opening, so I think they might fairly be understated. And the other comment about the back facade was that in the model format, we hadn't indicated there was always going to be a metal standing seam roof, and it didn't look like that on the last model. And I also will tell you that the clients have decided to not go with the blue shutters, have decided to go with a white shutter combination to sort of pick that up. Those were the comments to the board.
I think all the changes, although very subtle, are very successful. Yep.
Thank you, John.
Christine?
I'm good on this.
Jeff? You've answered every question, every concern, every issue that this board has asked. Thank you for the transition of the application and for listening to some of the key issues and concerns that this board had. Any public comment on the application? Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the application of, where are we?
70 Pheasant Close East.
Pheasant Close? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very
70
much.
Pheasant Close East LLC at 70 Pheasant Close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Good luck, John.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application, please.
Next application is 51 Gin Lane LLC.
Good evening. Michael Berenger, I'm the architect for the applicant. Let me just start. To either Jeffrey or Esther, would you like a 11 by 17 set of the plans that were submitted and presented at the last meeting? And I also can give them each a task map and a survey that I had given the other board members, just so they all have the same packet. So at the previous meeting, we presented the design of this house, which is at 51 Gin Lane, and I represented it as basically as a federal style and more specifically colonial revival design that is based very much on historic homes in the village, and that one of our goals on this house was that in a few years when the house gets to weather in a little bit, it would, the question might come up of how long has this house been here? Has it been here for 80 years, 100 years? Has it been renovated, or is it new? And so we went very historic. I think the application was well received by the board. The 3 members that were here essentially asked me to do 3 things. And the day after the meeting, I submitted these new elevations that have some very subtle changes to them. We raised the chimneys about 3 feet, and we made all of the dormers on the 3rd story a foot lower and a foot higher up on the roof. There's no third-story occupancy on this house, so they are really more of a decorative style. And then, as a courtesy, they asked me if I could get a colored rendering, and there was what I did is I actually kind of pursued 2 renderings from different. This one was done in my office, and this one was done by more of a professional renderer. And the problem we had with this is even my client used the term that it looks a little cartoonish, like a brochure kind of thing, where this is a little bit more of, has a little bit more of an estate feel to it, but they're the same house. And you can see the renderings can be interpreted differently. I think what's correct on this rendering is that we are looking at the natural shingle and the white trim, and the colors didn't work as well here, but the changes were so subtle that, you know, between the chimneys and the dormers, we had submitted those on Tuesday after the last meeting, so thought we had a good discussion about it, and I'll just see if there are any questions that you may have at this point.
Esther, you were not here at the last meeting?
No, I had a chance to actually go through the file, and this is extremely helpful. I know the site very well. It's a beautiful house, and I think it really will, once it weathers in, it will look like it's been there forever. It's a beautiful home.
Thank you.
No
Christine?
issues.
I think it's a traditional, appropriate, beautiful house.
Jeff?
I'm good.
Brian?
No, I think those little changes were good.
Think it helped.
Yeah, definitely. It makes the house feel a little more integrity.
We had actually done that on the pool house when we made the dormers smaller because looking at it in 3 dimensions, and that's consistent with what you asked for on the main
That's great.
house.
Again, a representation of when you provide us with the proper tools for us to make a decision.
Yeah.
It's easier for us to do so, and we appreciate your cooperation.
Fine, good.
Any public comment on the application? Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the application of 51 Gin Lane LLC.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yep, thank you very much.
Next application, please.
Next application, Bill Ford and M. McKee, 430 Halsey Neck Lane.
Board members, CMX Sammy, architect for Mr. Ford and Ms. McKee. I'll submit to the files after the posting and mailing. I have also photographs in addition to what you have in your files of the existing structure. And also I have provided the board with 3D renderings so that it will help you better understand as I navigate through this application with the various items that we're proposing to change in this property and in this building. Building is located on a 147,000 square foot lot, 3.3 acres plus. It's a flag lot off of Halsey Neck Lane. There is an existing 2-story house, existing 1.5-story garage, existing pool house and pool. What we are proposing, the house itself is basically a central ridge with 2 cross gables. It was built in early 90s. About 15 years ago or so, a conservatory was brought in from England and assembled on the side of the main house and added to the footprint of the main house. The present owners are proposing to basically do minor modifications to the exterior and interior of the house to bring it closer to what we consider our Southampton traditional classic shingle style house. I will walk you step by step through these changes on the exterior. I'll start from the north side of the property, the northwest side of the property, which is where we approach and first see the house. We're squaring the house on that corner, basically the 2 ends of the house. We're extending the existing roof lines from the second floor to first story porches, both on the north and the south of the property and the main house. On the north side, it would be a side entry to a mudroom and a kitchen that would open up to the existing conservatory. On the south side, it's a covered porch that wraps around and connects to the existing porch on the east side of the property. On the second floor, the master bedroom suite and office that is there opens up to a small balcony on top of that porch. The main entrance of the house has a small porch entry that's getting extended or widened to basically accommodate a grander entrance. It engages the two windows on either side of the main entrance, and the main front door is widening from what we have today, 3 foot to 4 foot 6 wide door. The language and materials of the house will remain shingle, although they'll be replaced with a bleached shingle. All the trim will be painted mid-gray, mid to light gray color throughout the house. That's pretty much the extent of the proposed work on the main house. On the pool house, there's existing canvas covered shade on the west side of it. We're proposing to convert that to actually a wooden porch with columns, colonnaded wooden porch. The rest of the pool house is staying as is and just getting renovated on the interior. And finally, the garage, which is a two-car garage with a small office, or let's say the site maintenance staff uses it. And then upstairs, it's a little sitting area. We're adding one more bay to that garage. The garage, I may say that it's sitting approximately 9 foot away from the property line. We would have to go to the ZBA. We have an application in front of the ZBA presently to get approval for non-conformity as far as the setback. But as far as the size of it, it is in conformance to the R120 800 square feet maximum footprint. We're just basically adding one more bay. We're changing the style of the garage doors. The rest of it is staying the same. Again, the same language of shingles, trim color. And if there's anything that you may want to find out more, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you. Zach, you did a report on this?
And this is not in a historic district, by the way.
Okay.
Newer house.
Halsey Neck.
Do you have any concerns, issues?
I'm curious about your lighthouse.
Octagonal structure. That's basically with what we have right now is a cross gable over there on that end, which we're changing that into that octagonal shape.
No, it's a whole new building that rises up behind the conservatory.
Correct. Well, there's
nothing there in the existing.
There is let me show you. Actually, yes. If you look at the elevation on this side, this is the facade.
Can you show me the color?
There's a pair of dormers over there, which basically extending that side of the house with the octagonal structure added onto it. Yes.
I think it's brilliant.
Actually,
so there's like an octagonal tower that's going up.
They elongated the roof line.
Zach.
Yeah, I'm looking at the.
And I have a photograph of the existing too that will give you a better idea. There's basically a pair of dormers right now over there. We're extending that and shaping it as such to that structure.
You know, it's sort of a folly.
Yeah.
No rules apply. You know, it's just an aesthetic choice. So.
Brian, comments?
I think it's brilliant, C-Mac. I think it's great. I think it's now it looks like a grand estate. And I love how you just pulled the roof lines out and it sits better on the land.
It ties itself to the ground better.
No, I think it's really great.
I would echo that. I think it's a very creative reimagination of a good house, turning it into a really, really good house. It's very beautiful. The materials, the scale, the proportion of everything, it's quite wonderful. It's far back on the lot. I think it's really an elegant house.
Christine?
I think you made an addition look like it was always there and it belongs.
Jeff?
What more can I say? So,
It's
Good job.
700 feet back
From
from
Halseneck?
Halseneck.
Yes, it's actually, the actual lot is close to 600. It's actually 700, correct. And the actual house is an additional 198, so I'd say close to 900 linear feet away from Halseneck.
It's just a shame no one will ever see it. That's ultimately at the end of the day. Any public comment on the application? Motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the application of Bill Ford and M. McKee at 430 Halsey Neck Lane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Need this for the file. Do we need all these copies? No. This is the original.
Next application, please.
Next application is Gary Ferrajari, 94 Willow Street.
Harry Ferrajari, 94 Willow Street. Proposing a one-story, approximately 408 square feet, family room with bathroom.
Just give me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Okay.
Do we have the mailing? Okay.
Do you have smaller plans?
Smaller plans? Myself, no.
For us.
Oh,
If you ever were to present another application before us, see how difficult it is for us to look at.
Oh, all right.
We asked the building department to start asking, requesting for smaller plans.
Oh, no.
Evidently that didn't
That
happen.
wasn't, if they had asked, I would have.
Not a problem. The one-story addition is the one you're proposing, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You waited.
Pretty simple, straightforward.
It's too busy.
Took the doghouse, matched the doghouse with the other part of the four-square.
Too much going on.
Too much going on, right?
We want a model and a render, no, just joking.
Streetscape.
Any public comment on the application? Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the application of Gary Ferrajari
That's very good.
at 94 Willow Street.
That's why they say it,
Right
I
on.
don't.
Making
The motion is, there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night. Good night.
They waited a long time. And she froze to
Next
death.
application, please.
Next application, Old North State Construction, 88 Bellows Lane. You can't wait.
Who's this? I remember this. Doubles.
Good evening. I'm Jim McChesney. I'm the architect for this project. We are looking for permission to demo an existing split-level ranch house and replace it with a 1.5-story gambrel roof
more
Point of
traditional.
reference, you don't need permission to demo, it's not a historic district.
Okay. Good. And we're planning on doing a more traditional shingle-style house, a gambrel roof line, traditional materials, wood shingle roof, wood shingle sides, some vertical tongue and groove around the front door, and typical simulated divided light windows. All the trim would be painted white. And a pool house to the west of the property in addition that has similar details.
Jim, the height to the main ridge is 27 feet 4 inches?
Correct.
And the chimney,
Is 3 feet, I believe, above that.
3 feet?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, you have the little pillars at the rear of the property, and then on
sorry?
the pillars that are on the south of the property, and then repeat that on the west elevation itself. I don't see them on the front, so those are the only two locations where those pillars will exist?
Those are actually, I'm sorry,
The pillars. On the
They-
west, on the south elevation is seen.
correct. On the south elevation, they're really just pilasters. They're attached to the walls.
Okay,
And
that's what I was
on
gonna ask.
the west elevation, which is the back elevation, is
Yes.
a covered porch.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very handsome house.
Little farmhouse.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very handsome,
It's nice. Good scale.
well proportioned.
Christine, comments?
I think it's good.
Jeff?
The only question I have, and unfortunately I haven't looked at the property, and I'm not sure I necessarily want to delay this, is on the, I think, off of Bellows Lane, direction-wise, this would be the south.
The front of the house is facing Bellows Lane,
Right,
which
right, I
is the north
understand.
elevation.
So the proximity to the lot line,
Mhm.
permissible though it may be, seems to be relatively short, 10 feet.
Mhm.
In the case of the pool house, 11 feet in the case of the house. And then I
Correct.
guess there's a 6 feet, like 6'6", there's a, I don't know whether that's a
It's a,
concrete entranceway or a
it's
bulkhead.
a cellar entranceway, which
entranceway.
is allowed to be within the setback.
Right.
The reason is the lot did have a couple of challenges. It's a corner lot, so there are 2 front yard setbacks. And so it really does make for a somewhat narrow building envelope. In addition to that, on the east side, on the Meeting House Lane side, there's approximately a 5-foot drop in elevation at the street level. So it kind of made the pyramid law a little bit difficult to deal with, but I think in this case, it was a good thing because it really kept the massing of the house down.
Do you know the distance between your lot line and the neighboring house? So in short, what will be the distance between your house and the neighboring?
Well, it would have to be at least another, it would have to be 20 feet because there's 10 feet of ours, and then theirs is 10 feet, but I believe that there's more.
Well, it may or may not, having experienced that once in a house where one house was grandfathered, and it was only 6 feet, 6 feet, so I mean.
It's more than, it's further away than the setback allows it to be.
Anything further, Jeff?
No.
Is there any public comment? Please step forward.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mary Marcensik. I live at 94 Old Town Road, and I had the opportunity to visit the boardroom and take a look at the plans for the house. I don't have any problem with it. I'll leave all those wonderful design questions to you. And, I mean, you know, I have no place. My concern is the parking of the driveway that comes in on Old Town Road. you have a courtyard, I believe, in the front, where you have 4 spaces allotted for cars in the front. And then around the corner on Old Town Road, alongside the neighbor, is Mr. Melter's house. I can't remember the number on his house, but his driveway, and then this driveway will come in. And I think it's to allow for 2 more parking spots. From what I could see from the plans, people would have to back out of that driveway.
So your question has to do with parking?
It does have to do with parking.
Okay.
Does that have anything to do with this board? I apologize.
It's okay.
That's okay. But just
Someone
to
told me
clarify,
that I should mention
the,
that.
the parking on Old Town, there is space for 2 cars on that
Correct.
side. On Bellows, there's parking for 4.
Because I understand it's a 5-bedroom house, is that right, Joe?
Again,
She's concerned that you have to back
Oh,
out.
I
of
should
the
get
old
rid of
town.
it.
Right.
Not with
I'm
food
sorry,
sets.
I was
That's okay.
told to do that.
Okay.
I didn't mean to cause you a problem.
So, where would I have to, you know,
Yes.
Create a problem, where would I bring that up?
Building department.
Building department.
Building department.
Okay.
Thank
Any
you so
further
much.
public comment? Anything further from the board? Motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the application of Old North State Construction, Inc. at 88 Bellows Lane.
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Good luck. Next application.
Circe and Leslie Dryden, 193 Meeting House Lane.
My name is Fred Weber. I'm the architect. I represent Circe and Leslie Dryden at 193 Meeting House Lane on the north side. They purchased the home in 2015 and interested in making improvements. The existing house is, I think, a typical Southampton house. Has a gambrel front roof, a front porch, projecting gambrel in the back, and most of the trim details that I think are fairly traditional in the town. The overall scope of the project is the existing house being here. They will take down a 1-story kitchen addition in the rear and then build a 2-story addition with a porch, a covered porch below and a deck above. There's an existing 2-story garage and apartment here. They would like to build a new swimming pool, or build a swimming pool, and a pergola here. There's an existing shed, and they would like to create a wraparound porch on the front. That is pending. We have an application right now in the Zoning Board of Appeals because although the house falls away from the property, it still extends over the required
Front facade
yard
remains the
setback.
same, you're just putting a front porch. All of the addition is gonna be at the rear of the property?
Correct.
What is the total square footage of increase that you're proposing?
The question is, do I have to figure the reduction of the, we're taking down part of the house. Are you looking for the net?
Net.
add?
The net.
The net add? The net add to the first floor is 338 feet. The net add to the second floor is 597 square feet.
Okay. And the second story deck that's being proposed,
Yes.
accessible?
Yes.
Challenge we will have is those 23 feet to side yard and probably another 20 feet, so you're gonna have major impact in an entertaining area between your neighbors, the one closest to Lewis and the one other direction of Long Plains. This board has some concerns about privacy. Whenever you create a large entertaining area such as a second story deck, people will obviously congregate around it. It could have a negative impact to your neighbors if you're that close to the property. Do you have a landscape plan proposed or something to impact the line of sight that you would have from that second story deck?
Well, first, I would just like to show the floor plan, the second story. So I'm sorry, I have to show everybody here. That's the existing house, and this is the second story that's being added. What we're basically adding is a master bedroom suite that has a deck beyond that, so it's not going to be like a private deck off a bedroom as opposed to a deck that people are, you
It's
know.
a very substantial deck for just off the bedroom suite.
It's going to overlook the neighborhood.
I mean, we could, the only reason it's that big is because the porch is that big. I mean, I don't have an issue reducing, and I could put like a hip roof that comes back. I mean, they don't really need, or want a deck that big, but basically, that's the size of the porch, you know, if I would show.
No, I
that.
understand. I
Yeah.
understand. You're basically using the covered porch as the landing for your second-story deck, and I understand that.
It's a small lot,
But it's extremely small lot, and,
And it is close to the neighbor.
correct. So something has to be done with regards to assisting us to make a positive approval for allowing a second-story deck in an area where you have 20 to 23 feet distance between you and your neighbors.
Okay, I mean, typically, when I've tried to reduce decks, I've, you know, brought in like a hip roof from three sides. I mean, I'm not trying to,
Set it in?
yeah, have an inset deck, so the deck would then occupy a space, you know, inside that area. I don't know if that's appropriate, or,
We were having that issue with the other application with that carport, and it just didn't work.
I'd want to go to the sun.
It just.
It could have.
It just didn't.
I mean,
that's-
typically.
I guess my concern would be saying yes, and you come back with a hip roof, and that design just doesn't, it takes away from the overall design of the house, which quite frankly, I think is attractive.
Let me just get the other side. So that's the rear of the house?
Right.
All right, so what I would basically be saying is that this would be a hip that would come in some point like that, and then on top of the wall would be capped like that, and then the rail would run from there to there. Do you know what I'm saying? It would reduce the,
That may work. Brian?
I don't have an objection with that. I think, you know, a deck off a master bedroom, I think is a very private little deck.
Yes, it is.
And this is just large, so by reducing that, I think that would be fine.
okay.
I think we're in agreement. I don't think there's any, well, I don't particularly have an issue with regards to your addition, the style, the scale of it. I think it's in keeping. I think everything you're doing will blend well. All the materials you're using match and blends with what exists. No issues at all. My major concern would be the second-story deck and privacy concerns.
I would agree.
Brian?
Same.
Christine?
Me too.
Jeff?
Okay.
Any public comment on the application? So, with all that being said, sorry it couldn't be finalized for this evening, but we could come back with the rendering showing some type of
Yeah, no, it's
impact to the
helpful
second-story
to get
deck.
to this
and-
point anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank
So you're
you.
asking the board to adjourn so that you could prepare that for the next meeting?
Yes, I would ask that the board adjourn for the next
Motion to
meeting.
approve applicant's request to adjourn until
Make a
next
motion
meeting.
that we approve the applicant's CSC and Leslie Dryden request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And our final application for this evening.
Josh Guberman, 136 Bishop's Lane.
In front of the camera, who's that?
think these are the tiniest plans I've ever seen.
You
From
want
this
them
board.
small? I got them small.
You definitely made it relevant.
Yes.
Beautiful rendering.
Thank you.
Proceed, your name for the record, please.
My name's Josh Guberman, and I've been in the village as a resident, year-round resident or seasonal resident for almost 20 years. I bought Doug and Sue Murtha's house on Harvest Lane in 2000, and I've been in and around the village. I am, by profession, a builder and real estate developer, both in New York City, and I've done some work out in the Hamptons, so including Pheasant Close, the village in Bridgehampton as well, and kind of the underpinning of what I do, as you can see from the work that I created with Mayron's team, is classic Hamptons architecture with a particular focus on low mass and appropriate scale, and also understanding the historical context of the neighborhood. Almost all my projects have classic use of materials, whether it's bluestones or Danish blend brick or shingle style, and that's what I've endeavored to create on this parcel. It's a bit of a
Wow, this parcel's this long, huh?
Yeah, it's one of the only parcels in the village that's over an acre. I grew, as I said, I spent much of my adulthood over in Harvest Lane at 0.42 acres. So what I tried to create with Mayron was a lot of respect for scale and mass, but more importantly, you probably have it in the file, this was an approved site plan for a completely different configuration by the current owner-builder. He had designed a very asymmetrical home that took advantage of, I think, a 35-foot height that was allowable on an acre-plus lot. It had tremendous mass and coverage. It had uneven roof lines. I don't disrespect anyone's right to design, but that's his intended design. If my wife, who's here tonight, and I don't buy the property. Our setback is,
We do comply with the ordinance, Mr. Chairman. Setbacks are, I can't read this, Josh, I'm sorry.
so this is Tin and Chris and John Foster have all gone through this in detail with me, so we conform to all lot requirement, zoning, and setbacks.
That's
So
not
we
always
have.
good, I'm just joking.
Okay, so we have, and Mayron's plans for me are not that great. I think we're like 70. We're either
So it
between
took four of you guys to figure this out.
No, it was funny because it was a running joke with John and I about whether we conformed. But it's between 70, since it's a triangulation at the front, and 80 feet off the street with substantial privet hedges of about 14 to 16 feet that exist.
70 to 80.
And so you have about 60, geez, even my glasses, guys, 70 on one side and probably about 90 on the other because it's an asymmetrical lot. And then you've got the side setback, more than 30 feet on both sides. It's 131 and a quarter, and we cut down, Mike, the owner's house quite a bit, both in scale and height and mass. We also left a lot of open area of green, including a children's lawn off the back patio, and then a very large expanse of grass between the tennis court and the brick and bluestone area.
Hold on a sec. They were able, I saw your face, they were able to get pool house, a pool, tennis, and still an open space on this lot in Bishops.
Well, it was one better, Curtis. We're next to the sump, so we almost enjoy, and my wife and I want to fix up that sump, which is now a rusted chain link fence, overgrown, rotted, so that's one of the things we wanted to do. I've been in the village a long time, and I've been involved in a lot of community stuff. This was kind of exciting that we had privacy on one side with the sump, privacy of a huge long driveway to our south, and almost nothing except for the northeast corner where we have the backyard of someone. So this was the intent. The big headline for us, for my wife and I, is that we have a very particular timeline with the current developer who you've, I think, have already seen and have approved his plan. which Mayron, I believe, handed out.
Yes.
So if we, he gave us 10 days, we're in contract now, subject to ARB approval. What we hope is that we've given you is much more appropriate.
Just to let you know, this board doesn't work by your timeline.
Oh, yeah, of course, that's what I'm
And that
saying.
doesn't-
Absolutely, I just want to let you know where we are, totally respect
Board
that.
of
So-
review, and
Yeah.
I think one of the previous board members said not a board of I'm sorry, what was it, expedited?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So,
My only, we can go on and on
Sure.
all night if you wish. My only concern, my only issue is the driveway gates. They don't exist anywhere in the community, anywhere in this neighborhood. That would be my only apprehension in the application. I think the design is beautiful. I think your rendering is beautiful. I think the mass fits appropriately considering the space that it's occupying. My only concern is those driveway gates, because I think it sets the wrong tone for the community overall.
The gates, Mr. Highsmith? The two gates?
I saw gates on the
rendering.
yeah. So, I totally appreciate that. The scale of the property was a little more consistent with the scale of a home that would have gates. There was gate approvals that you guys provided for 38 Harvest Lane, 2 large 8-foot
Harvest
mahogany
Lane.
gates.
different
Are-
community.
Okay. Okay.
Different community. You have Bishops, you
Corrigan,
have
Moses.
Corrigan, yes. So that community more open. That's probably heard a lot of conversation about the Corrigan. Different community, different neighborhood. Bike ride it every day. I walk it every day. It's part of seeing the streetscape. I'm happy to see your design. I think your home's going to be beautiful. I just think it sets the wrong tone for that particular, especially in that community, to put up driveway gates.
Would this board have any objection to approve the project without the gates, Mr. Highsmith?
I have no issue with the design. Brian, do you have any issues?
No. I think it's nice.
Esther?
I think that it's very appropriate, well rendered, the materials, the scale, the mass, the open space. I think it's really terrific.
Christine?
No, I agree. I mean, it's amazing you've managed to come up with some open space as well as all this other stuff.
Jeff?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Any public comment on the application? You have a comment? You have to come forward. You have to come forward.
I have a question about the sump. Is that, when you mentioned cleaning up the next door property?
You got to come to the microphone. You say you have a...
I just had a question about cleaning up the next door property. Does that not stay vacant if it's village property?
Not the jurisdiction.
Not the jurisdiction of this board, yeah.
Okay.
I don't, maybe he's going out there with a rake. I have no idea.
Mr. Highsmith, thank you very much, both for your patience tonight. It was a long night. My wife's pregnant, wants to get home, so we're gonna make a request.
Congratulations.
Thanks. So I respect and appreciate the comment on the gates. I don't want to echo, I think his name was Drew's comments. It was almost ironic, him saying, well, things are changing, but he's changing it. So I understood that. Would it be possible to get the approval without the gates?
The approval we would have would be subject without the driveway gates.
Okay, and can I have a question? So I'm fine with that.
Right.
Could we have do we have the opportunity to come back and plead our case again? Would that be okay?
Reapply for the driveway
For the
gates.
driveway gates?
at
Okay,
another
great.
Another point, it's another application, another process. Going to tell you up front, I would be very much against it. Again, I'm one person of a 5-panel board. You can make an argument for many reasons that I don't think would be reasonable for that particular area, especially in that. Just because of the decorum and the street and the vista of that community that I love.
Are the gates shown on the application for the building permit?
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. For that reason, do you think it should be in writing? Subject to?
No, but it was not advertised, the gates were not advertised on the agenda, that's all.
Okay. Grab the building permit just for
No, it
clarification. Grab building permit.
Just note on there that it's not approved.
Cross out the gates if you want, Mr. Highsmith.
Maybe they weren't even on there.
No. Demolition, existing, reconstruct,
It's
single-family
not on here
resident. There's no driveway gates here.
All right. That's fine.
Great.
Okay,
Can I want to say, I'm not a driveway gate guy. My wife, we have a one-year-old.
Oh, you-
I
you-
just said safety for kids.
You were doing so well before you said that. I'm teasing you.
Yeah, she just, I didn't have a big issue with the gates. It was just a concern for.
Well, it's not part of his application, so it's a
Okay,
moot point.
great.
You would have to you would have to
bring
apply
it as
for it, you would have to bring it as a
separate
separate
It's not
application.
anything to do, can I, because I.
You have to come forward, no one can hear you.
Sorry. I just like for having, hi, I'm Megan Guberman.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, so the gates are beautiful, but I understand they're not, you guys don't love gates, but what about for safety for kids? Like, I think about our kids running out in the front yard and playing out in our open area and like running into the street. That's why I like the
Community
gate.
has been full with kids for years, and I've not heard of anyone running out. I mean, again, I understand your safety and I understand the concerns.
Especially being next to a sump.
I'm sorry?
Especially being next to the sump. I worry.
Next to the sump.
Yeah. I
Okay.
Next to
worry.
the sump, which
I-
is.
I worry.
Stump is fenced, is it not?
Fenced, but
It is.
kids.
Well, I-
First of all, the fence is, we're gonna
If they're gonna
petition.
get through if they're gonna get through the gates at the fence at the sump, how are they not gonna get through your gates?
The gates are.
Electronic encoded.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If you can
You
get
know
through.
what, why
No,
don't
I
we
know,
table this to next time?
It's a
Okay.
moot point.
Okay.
It's not before the
Not an
board.
application.
I just suggest before going through the cost and the expense and coming to another hearing and waiting hours
I'll tell you, that was-
for
that was
driveway gates that probably won't be approved.
Okay, all right, well, yeah. Thank you so much, guys.
Good luck.
Good luck and congratulations
Thank you
again.
so much.
Motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the application of Josh Guberman at 136 Bishop's Lane.
Not the
Second.
driveway gates.
There's no driveway gates. It's not
Not
part
on
of the
the
application.
Say it anyway.
Okay.
Without driveway gates.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome to the
Thank you
neighborhood.
very much.
Good luck.
Last thing that we have to be considered is a discussion on the October 12th meeting. This recommendation of this board to change it till Tuesday, October 13th. I believe they already advertised for it, so just so we can go through the proper process. Anyone have any objection of changing the date to the 13th?
No.
Due to Columbus Day?
Except I never go anywhere on the 13th of anything, but I'll do it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Christine.
okay. So motion to change the October 12th date to October 13th.
I make a motion that we change the date of our October 12th meeting to Tuesday, October 13th, 2015.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes from August 24th.
Okay? Everybody okay
We
with
need
it?
to vote on both of the sets. We didn't have Jeff or Esther at the last meeting, so we didn't have a quorum.
Is everybody here?
Yes.
No, I actually,
What about September, what about
Brian
August?
wasn't here.
On the 24th, I
On the
wasn't
24th. I
here.
couldn't read my handwriting.
Okay, motion excluding Brian. Motion to approve the minutes from August 24th.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes of August 24th, 2015.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And motion to approve the minutes from September 14th.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from September 14th, 2015.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And motion to close this evening's meeting of the Architectural Board of Review for September 28, 2015.
I make a motion that we close the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation's meeting for September 28th, 2015.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Good night.